There are books meant purely for entertainment, offering an escape into fantastical worlds. Then there are those designed to instruct, imparting knowledge and wisdom. But a rare few exist that possess the power to terrify, texts of such profound and dangerous mystery that they are deliberately concealed, locked away for centuries, buried under layers of imposed silence and fierce suppression. This is the story of one such book. A text so ancient, it predates the very laws given to Moses, its origins lost in the mists of time. So volatile, so controversial that religious authorities, fearing its power, banished it from the sacred texts of the Bible. So prophetic, its pages foretold the rise of demonic forces, the coming of a Messiah, and the ultimate cataclysmic end of the world. This is the Book of Enoch. For over 1,500 years, it vanished from known history, lost to the relentless march of time. Whispers of its existence haunted the shadowy corners of historical accounts, surfacing in hushed tones and cryptic references. Scholars dismissed it as folklore, a collection of myths and legends. Priests, sensing a threat to established doctrine, feared its revelations. Even when fragments surfaced amidst the incredible discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the complete truth remained elusive, obscured by doubt and skepticism. Why was it deliberately removed, expunged from accepted narratives? What dangerous secrets does it contain, knowledge so potent it had to be suppressed? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, why does it recount the tale of angels who defied divine law, falling from grace, taking human wives, and birthing monstrous offspring who once held dominion over the earth? Before we delve into the depths of what has been hidden for millennia, let's pause for a moment and acknowledge the pull of the unknown. If you are already captivated, if the very mystery hinted at in the title quickens your pulse, then you've found your path. Subscribe to this channel to ensure you don't miss the forthcoming revelations, the unfolding of a truth long buried. Share your location in the comments below, along with the current time in your corner of the world. We are eager to know who is hearing this ancient voice, resonating across the globe, in this very moment. And if the story has piqued your interest, share this video, particularly with those who might instinctively grasp the weight of the mystery within the title, because it is far more than just a title. It's a warning, a premonition echoing through time. The Book of Enoch begins not in paradise, but in a world already spiraling into decay, teetering precariously on the brink of catastrophe. It unveils a time before the Great Flood, before Noah's Ark, before the utter collapse of the ancient world as we imagine it. In this era, something unnatural, something profoundly wrong, took place. Heavenly beings, the Watchers, gazed down upon the earth and coveted what was never meant for them. They descended, not with benevolent intentions to guide mankind, but to possess it, to exert their will upon the mortal realm. They took human women as wives, defying the natural order. They imparted forbidden knowledge, secrets best left unlearned. And from these unholy unions came forth giants, the Nephilim, monstrous creatures whose insatiable hunger threatened to devour the world. But the Book of Enoch is not merely a fantasy, a collection of imaginative tales. It is presented as a prophetic document, a record of visions bestowed upon a man who walked so closely with God that he was taken alive into heaven, spared the mortal fate of death. Enoch was not simply translated. He was removed, extracted from the world because what he witnessed, what he understood, could not remain within the earthly sphere unchanged. His writings, concealed for eons, illuminate the events unfolding in the unseen realm while mankind lived, loved, and succumbed to sin on the surface. A celestial war raged above and below, and Enoch was its divinely appointed witness. This book is not an easy read, not because of the complexity of its language, but because of the sheer weight of its implications. It challenges deeply held beliefs. It redefines the very origin of evil, tracing it to a source far older than human transgression. It sheds light on the presence of unclean spirits, entities that plague the world. It reveals that the Great Flood was not solely a consequence of human sin, but a response to a cosmic rebellion, a corruption that had infiltrated the fundamental structure of creation itself. What you are about to hear is not simply a story. It is a testimony, a sworn declaration of truth. Each chapter of this series will guide you deeper into a mystery deliberately concealed, perhaps even suppressed. You will uncover what angels fear, what demons desperately try to hide, and why this particular book, above almost any other, was so ruthlessly buried. But now, after centuries of silence, it rises again, and it begins with the descent of the Watchers. In the vast and sprawling lineage of early humanity, amidst a sea of forgotten names and lives blurred by the relentless passage of time, one figure stands apart, quietly defying obscurity: Enoch. A man whose story is shrouded in mystery, his name appearing briefly in the book of Genesis, mentioned in just a few lines. And yet, those few lines contain a truth so extraordinary, so profound, that it reverberates through the entirety of Scripture like a silent thunderclap. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. He was not dead, not buried, not returned to dust like all the others. He simply vanished, taken not by illness or war, or the slow decay of old age, but by the hand of God himself. Why? What made Enoch so special? Why would God remove a man from the earth, sparing him the common fate of death? That question, left unanswered by Genesis, is fully explored, examined in painstaking detail, in the book that bears his name. To truly understand Enoch, one must journey back to the very first breaths of creation, to the dawn of humanity. Enoch was born into a generation still echoing with the memory of Eden, the lost paradise. His great-grandfather was Adam, the first man, the one who walked in the garden of God, basking in the radiant light of his face. But paradise was long lost, its gates sealed shut, guarded by angelic sentinels. The children of Cain, consumed by envy and rebellion, had built cities of blood and darkness. They carved idols from stone, sang blasphemous songs to false gods, and gloried in the works of their own hands, forsaking the Creator. Violence became law, and pride became the object of worship. Yet, from the line of Seth, Adam's faithful son, there remained a flicker of remembrance, a remnant of people who still prayed, still held on to hope, still honored the name of the Creator. Enoch was born into that lineage, a beacon of light in an increasingly dark world. But even among the faithful remnant, he was different, set apart. While others tended flocks or tilled the soil, eking out a meager existence, Enoch sought solitude. He would climb the hills at dusk, drawn by an unseen force, to watch the celestial dance of the stars and whisper heartfelt prayers into the vast, encompassing silence. He studied not the ways of men, their petty squabbles and worldly ambitions, but the intricate patterns of the heavens, seeking to understand the divine order. His heart burned with a singular, unwavering hunger, not for earthly knowledge, not for temporal power, but to truly know God, to understand his will. He did not passively wait for divine encounters. He actively sought them, pursuing a deeper connection with the Almighty. And heaven, in turn, opened its ear, responding to his earnest yearning. For 300 years, an extraordinary length of time, Enoch walked with God, not merely metaphorically, not just occasionally, but in a constant living rhythm of communion. Every day was a prayer, a heartfelt conversation with the divine. Every night was an act of worship, a surrender to the celestial presence. His life became a melody, a harmonious song rising through the smoke of sacrifice, a symphony of devotion that only God could fully hear and appreciate. But as Enoch drew closer to the divine, ascending to spiritual heights, he also began to perceive the hidden truths beneath the deceptive surface of the world. He saw that earth was not only corrupted by human sin, the everyday failings of mankind, but also profoundly influenced by something far older, far more insidious, far more dangerous. He discerned the faint shadows of a celestial rebellion, a slow and quiet rot spreading insidiously among the angelic host. He sensed that mankind was being watched, scrutinized not only by God, in his benevolent oversight, but also by beings whose intentions were no longer holy, whose motives were tainted by something dark and covetous. It was then, at that pivotal moment, that God spoke directly to Enoch, not in a fleeting dream, not in a hushed whisper carried on the wind, but in unmistakable clarity, a voice that resonated through his very being. Enoch, I have chosen you. You will witness what no mortal has ever seen. You will write what no other man dares to write. Your words will endure until the end of the age. From that moment onward, Enoch's life was no longer his own. His personal desires, his individual ambitions, were subsumed by a higher calling. He became the scribe of righteousness, the chosen instrument through whom heaven would record its warnings, its judgments, and its promises for all of humankind. Angels descended from the celestial realm to instruct him, guiding him through the mysteries of the universe. He was shown the vast and intricate machinery of creation, the countless layers of the heavens, the precise paths of the stars, the secret names of the winds, and the terrifying fate of those who had fallen from the grace and presence of God. He witnessed the birth of the giants, born of forbidden unions, the insidious corruption of human hearts by celestial secrets, and the devastating flood that would one day wash away the wickedness that had engulfed the world. And he meticulously wrote it all down. Every vision, every divine decree, every whispered secret was inscribed for future generations, for us, who now seek to understand the mysteries of the past. The Book of Enoch is not a collection of folklore, not a compilation of myths and legends. It is presented as a divine archive, a celestial testimony, both breathtakingly beautiful and profoundly terrifying in its stark clarity. It unveils the true origin of demons, the just punishment of fallen angels, and the deep sorrow of a creator watching his creation spiral into madness. And yet, woven throughout the thunderous pronouncements of judgment, is a delicate thread of golden light, a glimmering prophecy of redemption. For Enoch did not only witness judgment, he also saw hope, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. He saw the Son of Man seated beside the Ancient of Days, a vision of a future Redeemer who would one day restore all things to their original glory. Long before the prophets of Israel, long before the humble birth in Bethlehem, Enoch foresaw the coming of the Messiah and wept, overcome by the weight of his vision. Before he vanished from the earth, before his ascension into heaven, Enoch gathered his family, imparting his wisdom to those he loved. He took his son Methuselah, destined to become the longest living man in history, and placed the precious scrolls into his hands, entrusting him with a sacred duty. "These are not my words," he said, his voice filled with solemnity. "They are the words of the Most High. Keep them, guard them, for one day the world will forget, and they will desperately need to remember." And then, one morning, Enoch rose before the sun, as he always did, and walked out into the hills, seeking solace and communion with the divine. But this time he did not return. The sky above parted, revealing an unimaginable spectacle. Light poured down like a waterfall of fire, engulfing him in its incandescent embrace. And Enoch was taken alive into the realms of heaven, spared the agony of death. His physical body was never found, leaving behind only his profound and enduring writings. These writings were cherished by the early followers of God, revered for their insights into the divine realm. They were read aloud in synagogues, passed down through generations, and even quoted by the apostles, the pillars of the early church. Jude, the brother of Jesus, directly references Enoch's prophecy, declaring its truth and explicitly calling him the seventh from Adam, affirming his place in the sacred lineage. For a time, Enoch's voice was honored, his visions respected. But as religious power became increasingly consolidated and doctrines were rigidly systematized, his revelations began to be seen as too dangerous, too unsettling. The church found the Book of Enoch to be too detailed, too direct, too wild to be easily controlled. It spoke of angelic sins, heavenly realms, and esoteric knowledge that challenged the carefully constructed borders of orthodoxy. And so it was cast aside, deemed apocryphal, but not everywhere. In the remote mountains of Ethiopia, the book endured, protected by devout monks who recognized its inherent value. They preserved it in the ancient Ge'ez language, meticulously copying it by hand, generation after generation, safeguarding its contents from destruction. In their unwavering faithfulness, the book remained whole and untouched, preserved exactly as Enoch had written it, a testament to their dedication. And when scholars rediscovered it in the 18th century, and its authenticity was further confirmed by the discovery of fragments among the Dead Sea Scrolls in the 20th century, the truth could no longer be denied. The Book of Enoch had survived, against all odds, and its voice, once silenced, now speaks again, echoing through the corridors of time. Enoch's life is more than just a historical mystery. It is a blueprint, a guide for those seeking a deeper connection with the divine. A man who lived not for the fleeting pleasures of this world, but for the enduring promises of the world to come. A man who chose obedience when rebellion reigned, who stood firm in his faith amidst a sea of corruption. A man who walked so closely with God that death itself could not hold him. His legacy is not just the extraordinary visions he left behind, but the powerful example he set for those willing to listen, to heed his timeless wisdom. In a time of overwhelming noise and pervasive corruption, Enoch walked in silence and truth, seeking not worldly fame, but divine understanding. And for that unwavering devotion, God lifted him from the dust, from the limitations of mortality, and placed him among the stars, a beacon of hope for all those who seek a higher calling. Before the flood that reshaped the world, before fire rained down from heaven, before tablets were carved in stone, a rebellion of cosmic proportions began, not on earth, but in the celestial realm. It was not a rebellion of swords and blood, a violent uprising against the divine order, but a more insidious rebellion, born of longing, of angels who watched the world too closely, their hearts captivated by forbidden desires. They were called the Watchers, 200 in number, chosen from among the highest ranks of heaven to observe mankind, to act as guardians and guides. Their role was deceptively simple: to watch over humanity, to guide them from a distance, to gently remind them of the Creator's path, offering subtle encouragement and protection. They were meant to be sentinels, detached observers, not active participants in the earthly drama. Yet, over time, their eyes lingered too long, their attention becoming fixated on the mortal realm. They watched as men and women built families, forging bonds of love and kinship, tended their fields, cultivating the land, and danced beneath the shimmering stars, celebrating the joys of life. They heard the songs sung around crackling fires, tales of courage and love, saw hands clasped in affection, witnessed mothers cradle their newborn infants, their hearts overflowing with tenderness. And slowly, imperceptibly, something awakened within them, a forbidden yearning, a desire they were never meant to experience. They began to covet what was never meant to be theirs, the joys and experiences of mortal life. The beauty of human women stirred within them a profound longing, a yearning they had never known in the sterile perfection of the celestial realm. At first, they resisted the temptation, clinging to the boundaries of their divine purpose. The barrier between heaven and earth was absolute, a sacred divide that must not be crossed. But temptation, when left unchecked, festers and grows, becoming an insatiable hunger, and hunger inevitably leads to rebellion. One angel, Samiaza, a noble and mighty being, second only to the archangels in power and influence, voiced what the others had dared only to think, whispering their forbidden desires in the hushed silence of their hearts. He confessed his longing to take a human wife, to experience the intimacy and connection that he had only observed from afar. The others stood in stunned silence, their wings heavy with conflict, torn between their loyalty to the divine and the intoxicating allure of the mortal realm. Then, one by one, they confessed to harboring the same forbidden longing, revealing the secret desires they had kept hidden for so long. But Samiaza, aware of the gravity of their decision, warned them, his voice grave with foreboding. "If I descend alone, I will bear the full judgment. The consequences of my actions will fall solely upon me. But if we descend together, we will share the fate, whatever it may be." And so, they made a pact, an unbreakable oath sealed beneath the watchful gaze of the stars, atop a great mountain that would one day be called Hermon. Its name, meaning curse, was a grim premonition of the events that would unfold that night on its slopes. On the slopes of Mount Hermon, the 200 angels stood in a circle, their faces illuminated by the pale moonlight. Each placed his hand upon the shoulder of the one beside him, forming a chain of commitment, binding them together in their shared defiance. Together, they spoke the fateful words that would shatter the delicate order of heaven, forever altering the course of history. We bind ourselves by mutual curses. We will not turn back from this plan. We will descend to earth. We will take wives from among the daughters of men. And whatever may come, we will face it together. In that moment, the very fabric of the cosmos shifted, its delicate balance disrupted. The line between the divine and the mortal was irrevocably crossed, blurring the boundaries between heaven and earth. The stars above grew dim, their light faltering, and the angels fell, plunging from grace, their wings heavy with the weight of their transgression. But this was no fall like Lucifer's, born of pride and a lust for power, a violent rebellion against the authority of God. This was different, a fall born of desire, of an overwhelming longing to possess beauty that was not theirs to hold, to experience the fleeting joys of mortal existence. They descended not in wrath, consumed by hatred, but in wonder, their hearts filled with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation, like stars slipping silently from the velvet sky. When they landed on earth, they were no longer entirely angels, their celestial nature forever tainted by their transgression. They were no longer fit for heaven, their wings clipped, their connection to the divine severed. The earth trembled under their feet, sensing the unnatural presence of these fallen beings, and the daughters of men looked upon them and were captivated by their otherworldly beauty. These were no ordinary men. They shone with an ethereal radiance, tall and flawless in their physical perfection, their voices echoing with the timbre of eternity, resonating with an unnatural power. The women did not resist, their hearts swayed by the allure of these celestial beings. They took them as wives, hundreds of them, and with them, they conceived something the world had never seen before, something both wondrous and terrifying. The Nephilim, giants born of heaven and earth, but belonging fully to neither realm. Their very existence defied the natural order, a perversion of creation itself. Their height was monstrous, exceeding all human measure. Some reached 30 feet tall, towering over the landscape like walking mountains. Their strength was beyond reckoning, unmatched by any mortal being. One could tear a tree from the ground with ease, uprooting ancient oaks as if they were mere saplings. Another could crush stone in his hand, pulverizing granite into dust with a single squeeze. At first, humanity worshipped them, awestruck by their immense power and otherworldly beauty. Surely these were gods, or at least the sons of gods, beings of unimaginable power and wisdom. They hoped the Nephilim would protect them, would lead them to a new era of prosperity and peace, ushering in a golden age. But they were tragically wrong, blinded by their own desires and hopes. The Nephilim were not protectors, but destroyers, their hearts filled with a dark and insatiable hunger. Their appetites were insatiable, consuming everything in their path. They devoured entire harvests, leaving the fields barren and desolate. They slaughtered herds of livestock, feasting on the flesh of countless animals when there was no food left, their hunger never truly satisfied. And when the food ran out, when the land was stripped bare, they did not hesitate. They turned on the people themselves, their former worshippers becoming their prey. The book of Enoch says they began to sin against all living creatures, against birds, beasts, reptiles, and fish, slaughtering them without remorse. And then, consumed by their insatiable hunger and boundless cruelty, they turned against one another, engaging in horrific acts of cannibalism. They drank blood, tearing flesh from bone, devouring each other in a grotesque display of primal savagery. Their violence knew no limit, their cruelty surpassing all understanding. What was once a garden, a place of beauty and abundance, had become a grave, a testament to their destructive power. And the watchers, their fathers, stood by, powerless to stop the horror they had unleashed upon the world, bound by their oath and consumed by their own guilt. Some of the watchers wept, their hearts breaking at the sight of the destruction they had wrought. Others turned away, unable to bear witness to the suffering they had caused. But their oath had bound them to this fate, sealing their destiny. They had shattered the delicate order of creation, unleashing a wave of chaos and destruction that threatened to engulf the entire world. Samayaza, standing amidst the ruin, his face etched with despair, whispered, his voice barely audible above the screams of the dying, "What have we done?" But the skies were silent, offering no comfort, no forgiveness. No answer came, only the haunting screams of those dying below, a chorus of suffering that echoed through the ravaged landscape. The mountain where they had sworn their oath, once a place of stars and beauty, was now a cursed altar, a wound in the very fabric of the world, a constant reminder of their transgression. But their corruption did not end with their monstrous children. The Watchers also brought forbidden knowledge to humanity, secrets meant only for the eyes and ears of heaven, unleashing a torrent of unforeseen consequences. They taught mankind how to forge swords and armor, transforming warfare into a brutal and efficient art, how to adorn the body with cosmetics and jewelry, fostering vanity and obsession with outward appearance, how to enchant with herbs, harnessing the power of nature for their own selfish desires, and how to summon spirits, opening a gateway to the unseen realm. They revealed the movement of stars, not for worship and understanding, but for power, for predicting the future and manipulating events to their own advantage. Magic entered the world, unleashing forces that were beyond human control. Vanity flourished, consumed by their own self-importance. War became a craft, perfected and refined, and truth became twisted and distorted, manipulated for personal gain. What began as a single whisper of longing, a fleeting moment of weakness, became a raging storm, consuming everything in its path. The Watchers had not only defiled themselves, corrupting their celestial nature, they had fundamentally changed the course of humanity, leading them down a path of destruction. The hearts of men, once dimly aware of the divine presence, now turned completely inward, consumed by their own selfish desires and worldly ambitions. The world groaned beneath the crushing weight of blood and fire, ravaged by violence and corruption. The angels in heaven, those who remained faithful and unfallen, watched with deep sorrow, their hearts heavy with grief, witnessing the devastation unfolding below. And then, their sorrow turning to righteous anger, they rose, their wings beating with purpose. They carried the report to the throne of the Almighty, presenting the evidence of the Watchers' transgression and the suffering of mankind. The time for judgment had come, a reckoning was at hand. But the story of the Watchers was not yet done, their influence still spreading like a malignant disease. Their forbidden knowledge continued to corrupt the hearts of men. Their monstrous children still ruled the earth, their reign of terror unchecked. And their curse still festered, poisoning the very fabric of creation. Soon, God would act, intervening in the affairs of mortals to restore balance to the world. But before the judgment came, the sins of the Watchers would reach even deeper, their consequences reverberating through the ages. They had opened a door to darkness, and what had entered would not leave easily, its influence lingering long after the flood had subsided. When the Watchers took human wives, defying the natural order, the earth itself shifted beneath their feet, as if sensing the unnatural union. From this unholy union, monstrous offspring were born, creatures unlike anything that had walked the land before, a perversion of life itself. They were the Nephilim, whose name means fallen ones, a fitting description for their hybrid nature. Their very existence defied nature, a contradiction in terms. They were not fully angel, their celestial nature tainted, nor fully human, their mortal limitations amplified. They were something in between, a grotesque mockery of both. Their mothers bore them in agony, their bodies stretched and contorted beyond human endurance. These were not ordinary children, born with the gentle promise of new life. Their births brought tremors, the earth shaking in protest at their unnatural emergence. The air thickened, heavy with a sense of dread, and the sky dimmed, casting a pall over the land. And when they emerged from the womb, they were already the size of full-grown men, their monstrous forms a testament to the corruption that had birthed them. Within months, they towered over the tallest trees, their immense size defying all natural laws. Within years, they became forces of destruction, their hunger and rage consuming everything in their path. The Book of Enoch records that they stood 30 feet tall or more, their towering forms casting long shadows across the land. But it was not their height alone that made them so terrifying. It was their insatiable hunger, a bottomless pit that could never be filled. One could consume a village's grain in a single sitting, devouring entire stores of food without even pausing for breath. Another would devour entire herds of livestock, slaughtering countless animals and still cry for more. Their hunger never abated. They stripped the land of its resources with monstrous speed, leaving behind a trail of devastation. Fields turned barren, rivers dried up, forests vanished beneath their feet, consumed by their insatiable appetites. And when the food ran out, when the land was stripped bare, they did not hesitate to turn on mankind, their former protectors becoming their prey. At first, the people tried to appease them, hoping to satiate their hunger and avoid their wrath. Tribes offered tribute, grain, animals, even their own children, sacrificing their most precious possessions in hopes of survival. But the Nephilim were insatiable, their hunger growing with each offering. The more they received, the more they demanded, their cruelty knowing no bounds. Villages were emptied, their inhabitants devoured. Fathers watched helplessly as their sons were dragged away, their screams echoing through the night. Mothers hid their infants in caves, praying that the giants would not find them, their hearts filled with terror. But nothing could hide from the eyes of the Nephilim, their senses heightened by their unnatural heritage. They hunted by scent, by sound, by the trembling of the earth beneath a fleeing foot, their pursuit relentless. They were gods of death, and worse, they delighted in it, reveling in the suffering of their victims. The land, once filled with laughter and music, the sounds of human life, now echoed with screams, a constant reminder of the Nephilim's cruelty. Bones littered the earth, scattered across the landscape, a testament to their insatiable hunger. Smoke rose from towns reduced to rubble, their once vibrant communities now desolate and lifeless. The Book of Enoch spares no horror, painting a vivid picture of the devastation wrought by these monstrous beings. The Nephilim sinned against all life, against birds, beasts, reptiles, fish, and then against one another, their cruelty knowing no bounds. They drank blood, tore flesh, devoured each other, their grotesque cannibalism a testament to their utter depravity. The giants that had once seemed divine, worthy of worship, now revealed themselves as beasts in the truest sense, their humanity extinguished by their insatiable hunger and boundless cruelty. Their rage was relentless, their violence unyielding. They ruled by terror, instilling fear in the hearts of all who lived under their shadow. And under their oppressive rule, the human race shrank in number and in spirit, their hope dwindling with each passing day. What made the Nephilim even more terrible than their immense size or their incredible strength was their awareness. They were not mindless monsters driven solely by instinct. They spoke, they reasoned, they understood the consequences of their actions. Some even mocked their victims, taunting them with their impending doom. They knew they were not of this world, that their existence was a perversion of the natural order, and they despised the world for it, unleashing their rage upon all who crossed their path. A bitter knowledge burned in their hearts. They were children born of sin, and neither the celestial choirs nor the mortal realm held a place for them. This festering hatred manifested as a need for destruction. Consumption was not enough. They craved desecration. They toppled sacred altars, monuments of faith reduced to rubble. They defiled holy places, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake, a testament to their spite. Yet the watchers did not intervene. Some reveled in their offspring's power, celebrating their destructive reign. Others wept, paralyzed by the consequences of their choices, trapped in a path they themselves had paved. One watcher, Azel, channeled his despair into a new form of corruption. He began to impart the secrets of war to mankind. Before his influence, men fought with fists and crude tools. Now they forged blades of sharpened metal, crafted shields for defense, and built weapons designed not just to survive, but to kill with ruthless efficiency. Enoch writes that Azel taught men the art of shaping iron, transforming it into spears and daggers that could strike from afar, delivering death with precision. War, once a rare and primitive occurrence, became an art, a science of destruction. Tribes turned against each other, steel in hand and vengeance in their hearts. Survival gave way to conquest, disputes escalated into slaughter. And the Nephilim watched, their laughter echoing through the ravaged lands. For mankind had learned to destroy itself. But Azel wasn't finished. He turned to the women, offering them knowledge meant only for angels. He showed them how to paint their faces with minerals, how to fashion gemstones into ornaments, how to use beauty as a form of enchantment. Vanity took root, modesty withered and died, attraction became manipulation, and love devolved into possession. Enoch records that Azel taught the art of beautifying eyelids and crafting adornments from every precious stone. This knowledge, once sacred, was now a tool for seduction, deception, and control, and humanity, eager for power, embraced it without question. Other watchers followed Azel's lead. Samayaza revealed the secrets of sorcery, teaching men how to call upon spirits, how to bend nature to their will. Another watcher taught astrology, not to glorify God, but to predict fate and control time. Still another revealed enchantments and the secrets of root cutting. All of it, every forbidden teaching, poured from the mouths of fallen angels into the eager ears of men. Humanity, drunk on newfound knowledge, forgot the one who had given them life. Violence spread like wildfire, consuming everything in its path. Magic corrupted hearts. Pride swelled into idolatry. The Nephilim ruled with cruelty, their reign of terror unchallenged. The people below them mimicked their masters, becoming reflections of their wickedness. The earth, once a reflection of Eden, became a twisted mirror of heaven's rebellion. Enoch, witnessing this descent into darkness, understood that the disease of the watchers had not ended with their sin. It had become a plague, infecting every living soul. And still God did not act, but heaven was not blind. The cries of the oppressed reached beyond the clouds, echoing through the celestial realm. The blood of the innocent stained the soil, a testament to the world's suffering. The angels who had remained loyal looked down with grief, their hearts heavy with sorrow. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, for mighty archangels, stood before the throne and cried out, "How long, O Lord?" And at last God answered, "Judgment is coming. But before the flood, before the chains are forged, before the demons rise, the full horror of the Nephilim must be revealed. For only then will the justice of God be understood." After the watchers descended and the Nephilim spread across the land like a plague of ruin, the world changed not only in blood and bone, but in knowledge. It was not just the monstrous giants that tore creation apart. It was the invisible poison of forbidden teachings, whispered into the ears of humanity by angels who had once stood in the presence of the Most High. These were not tricks or primitive spells. They were celestial secrets, divine mechanisms meant for angels alone, now handed recklessly to mortals who had neither the wisdom nor the purity to bear them. Chief among the corruptors was Azel, once named God Strengthens, now remembered as the one who weakened the world's connection to its creator. He did not fall with violence. He fell with gifts, deceptive, beautiful, and deadly. He taught mankind the secrets of metal, the art of shaping the earth's veins into weapons. Before Azel, men fought with stones, with fists, with anger restrained by the limits of flesh. After Azel, they forged blades that split bone, spears that flew from afar, armor that turned away justice. Violence became an industry, and war became a language everyone spoke. But Azel's most devastating lesson was not in battle. It was in vanity. He turned to the daughters of men and taught them how to adorn themselves, not with the light of purity, but with paints, oils, and mirrors. He ground minerals into pigments, showed them how to darken the eyes, color the lips, craft bracelets and earrings to catch the attention of wandering glances. Beauty, once a reflection of divine design, became a weapon. The heart was no longer seen. Only the face mattered. Women, once revered as life-bearers and nurturers, became objects in the hands of those who had forgotten God. The Book of Enoch tells us that Azel taught both men and women arts meant for glory and truth, now twisted for lust and domination. The line between sacred and profane blurred until no one remembered where it once stood. Love turned to control, desire turned to greed. The world had not just changed, it had been reprogrammed. Samayaza, leader of the Watchers, added another layer of corruption. He taught enchantments and root cutting, the secrets of herbs and the rhythm of words that summoned spirits from beyond the veil. Sorcery entered the world, not for healing or help, but for control and illusion. Men learned how to cloud the minds of others, to bind wills with cursed symbols, to open gateways they could never close. Spirits responded to their calls, but they were not holy. They were shadows eager to whisper lies in exchange for obedience. And the Watchers watched with silent satisfaction as mankind lost its fear of heaven. Other fallen angels joined the flood. Armoros taught how to break spells not to defend the weak, but to compete in power. Barakiel taught astrology, not as a means to marvel at creation, but to manipulate fate. The stars, once songs of glory, became tools for greed. Humanity believed the stars ruled their lives, and in doing so, they stopped listening to the one who had set the stars in place. Shamsiel taught the signs of the sun, Sariel the course of the moon. Each new teaching was a wonder corrupted. The seasons were no longer sacred. They were charts for war, signs for conquest. Knowledge multiplied, but wisdom vanished. Mankind grew clever, but not holy. They spoke of destiny, not righteousness. They trusted signs, not prayer. The earth groaned beneath this weight. For every secret taught, a piece of innocence was lost. What had once been a creation of light now teetered on the edge of shadow, and as more angels fell into this pattern, the balance between heaven and earth fractured. Temples were built, but not for God. Altars were raised, but not in gratitude. The children of men bowed to the stars, to the spirits, to the giants who ruled them in terror, and the Watchers, who had once sworn to protect humanity, now stood over it like kings. What made the teachings so dangerous was not that they were lies. They were truth, unguarded truth, without reverence, in the hands of the unrighteous. Even truth becomes a weapon, and so it was. Music became seduction, potions became poison, signs became superstition. And above all, mankind forgot how to worship. The most tragic part of the Watchers' fall was this: their gifts were once divine. Their knowledge had been meant to serve heaven. In another world, in another time, those same teachings could have helped humanity flourish in purity. But once severed from God, knowledge became cancer, growth became greed, and every new revelation pushed the world further from its creator. The cries of the innocent multiplied. Men killed not for survival but for pride. Women adorned themselves not for love, but for power. Kings sacrificed their own children to please spirits they did not understand. And in the shadows the fallen angels watched, their eyes dim, their wings stained by their choice. They had wanted to taste the beauty of earth. Now they tasted its ruin. Enoch saw it all. He recorded it not as a historian, but as a witness, a prophet whose pen burned with sorrow and urgency. His words do not merely describe a fall. They warn of what happens when divine order is cast aside for personal desire. The Watchers were not monsters. They were once holy, and that is what makes their descent so terrifying. Heaven watched in silence, but only for a moment. The four great archangels had seen enough. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, guardians of the throne, stood before the presence of the Almighty, and they spoke not only on behalf of heaven, but on behalf of earth. "How long, O Lord?" they cried. "How long will you allow the corruption to continue? The Nephilim devour your children. The Watchers twist your creation, and the cries of the faithful are drowned in the blood of the innocent." Mega God, who is slow to anger but perfect in justice, answered, "It is enough." The Watchers would be judged, the giants would fall, the earth would be cleansed. But first a man must be called, a man who still walked in purity, a man who still spoke with God. That man was Enoch, and the time had come for him to deliver heaven's decree to those who had once stood in heaven's courts. There comes a moment in every tale of rebellion when the silence breaks, when the wounds inflicted on the innocent can no longer be ignored, when the very fabric of creation screams for justice. That moment had come. The world groaned beneath the weight of sin. The skies darkened, not just from clouds, but from the absence of divine favor. The seas churned, the ground cracked, and the voices of the suffering men, women, and children rose like incense of grief to the throne of the Almighty. The book of Enoch tells us that the earth itself laid accusation against the lawless ones. The earth, once blessed and called good, was now a witness to corruption so vile that it could not remain silent. This was no poetic metaphor. It was a spiritual reality. The ground soaked in innocent blood became a testimony. The rivers clogged with the ashes of burnt offerings made to false gods carried the sorrows of the oppressed. The sky, once a canopy of peace, now echoed with thunder, not born of weather, but of divine unease. Creation itself had been inverted. What was made for harmony had become a stage for horror. And in that chaos, figures rose from the depths of heavenly glory to bring the report before the Creator himself. Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, archangels of power and purity, stood at the foot of the throne. They did not weep, for their sorrow was too deep for tears. They spoke not with trembling, but with purpose. Michael stepped forward first. His name means who is like God, and with that name came authority. Lord of hosts, he said, you see what has been done. Azel, your servant, has betrayed his post. He has taught bloodshed. He has given secrets of war to men who were not meant to wield such power. Because of him, the earth runs red. Gabriel followed, his voice carrying the cadence of a trumpet before battle. The souls of the murdered cry out. The innocent are slain. The children are torn from the arms of their mothers. They plead for justice, and they ask, how long will our blood remain unavenged? There was no rage in his words, only unbearable truth. Truth sharp as any blade forged by the fallen. Raphael, the healer, spoke next. His voice was gentle, yet filled with urgency. The spirits of men are being destroyed, the minds of women corrupted. The earth itself withers beneath their feet. The balance you established is broken. If this continues, there will be nothing left to heal. Then came Uriel, the light of God, the revealer of mysteries. His gaze pierced through time, through darkness, through all that was hidden. The darkness has grown so deep that even the righteous can barely see. Temples lay in ruin. The stars are used to deceive. The voices of the faithful are few. If you do not act, Lord, the light will vanish forever. A silence fell, but it was not the peace of stillness. It was the stillness before thunder, the silence of a decision being weighed, measured, made. The throne of God, radiant and infinite, did not tremble. It did not waver. And then the voice came, not in fury, but in absolute resolve. Hear me, my faithful ones. The time has come. I will not allow this corruption to continue. The command of God is not like the command of kings. It does not echo, transforms. When he speaks, the very laws of nature bend to his word. The watchers will be bound, God said. The Nephilim will be destroyed. The earth will be cleansed. The decree was final. Judgment had begun, but justice does not descend in wrath alone. It comes with order, it comes with instruction. Each angel was given a task, and none questioned their role. To Uriel the Lord said, go to Noah, son of Lamech. Warn him, instruct him to build an ark. A flood is coming, not of politics, not of war, but of water. It will cover the earth, and only those within the vessel will be saved. Without hesitation, Uriel vanished in light. To Raphael, the healer turned judge, God gave a darker mission. Go to Azel, bind him, cast him into the desert of Dudail, cover him with jagged stones. He is to remain there until the day of judgment when he will be thrown into fire. Raphael's face did not change, but his sorrow was visible. He bowed and departed. To Gabriel the Lord gave the sword of division. Go to the Nephilim. Set them against each other. Let them destroy themselves in battle. They were born of violence. By violence they shall fall. Gabriel's wings spread in a blaze of holy fire. He descended like a comet toward the earth. Finally, to Michael, commander of heavenly hosts, God gave the most solemn charge. Go to Samiaza and all who descended with him. Bind them, bury them beneath the earth. For 70 generations they shall remain in darkness until their judgment. Then they will be cast into the abyss of fire. Michael bowed deeply. It will be done, Lord. The sky over earth changed that day. Something shifted in the winds, in the waters, in the very breath of the world. Those who walked with God felt it. The Nephilim sensed it, though they could not name it. The watchers, scattered across the land, paused in their corruptions. They knew their time had ended. Uriel appeared to Noah as he worked his vineyard. The old man fell to his knees, for the presence of the angel was unbearable in its brightness. Do not be afraid, Uriel said. You have found favor with the Lord. A great flood is coming. Build an ark. Bring your family, for everything else will be swept away. And Noah obeyed, not with debate, not with delay. He listened and he acted. Faith is not in feeling. It is in obedience. Meanwhile, Raphael descended into the wastelands where Azel stood, watching men fight with the very swords he had taught them to forge. Raphael, Azel said, half laughing, half trembling. Have you come to gloat? No, the angel replied. I have come to bind you. Invisible chains wrapped around Azel, forged not of iron, but of judgment itself. He fell to his knees. You will be cast into darkness, Raphael said, and you will remain there until the day you are thrown into fire. Gabriel passed over the camps of the giants. He did not strike them. He whispered into their minds seeds of pride, seeds of suspicion. The Nephilim, already poisoned by hate, turned on one another, brother against brother, mountain against mountain. Their screams shook the sky. Their blood turned rivers red. Michael, brightest and fiercest, descended upon the watchers gathered at their cursed mountain. Samiaza stepped forward, no longer proud, only weary. Will you bind us, Michael? He asked. We who were once your brothers? Michael looked at them without anger, only sorrow. You broke the sacred law. You defiled the earth. Now you will be bound. Chains of light fell upon them. The mountain opened, and they were swallowed into the earth. In heaven, the 4 angels returned to the throne. It is done, they said, and the Lord looked upon the earth once more. The watchers were silenced. The Nephilim had begun to fall, and Noah was building the ark. The end was coming, but not in chaos, not in injustice. Judgment does not always arrive with a roar. Sometimes it begins with a whisper from heaven and a crack in the earth. Sometimes it arrives quietly, like the first drop of rain before the storm. But when the Lord of hosts decrees that the reckoning shall come, nothing in heaven or on earth can delay it. The watchers had broken their oath. They had crossed the line that must never be crossed. Their children, the Nephilim, had turned the world into a playground of violence and blasphemy. The teachings they had scattered like seeds now grew into forests of ruin. The time for warnings had passed. The time for mercy had ended. Now the sword of heaven would fall. The archangels moved swiftly. They did not debate. They did not hesitate. They moved with the weight of divine justice behind them and the authority of the Almighty in every word. Michael, clothed in light brighter than fire, descended once more to Mount Hermon. It was upon that very ground, the hallowed yet sullied peak of Mount Hermon, that the watchers had sealed their pact of rebellion, a betrayal that echoed through the celestial spheres. How fitting it was, then, that their divine reckoning should commence at the precise locus of their transgression. The mountain, once veiled in ethereal mists and revered as sacred, now trembled violently beneath the weight of Michael's incandescent presence. Lightning, like a celestial blade, cleaved the heavens, illuminating the scene with stark, unforgiving light. The air, thick with an almost palpable sense of divine authority, crackled with energy, scattering across the face of the earth, reaching even the most secluded corners where the Watchers had sought refuge. Even before they beheld the Archangel's majestic form, the Watchers sensed the inexorable pull of impending judgment, a force that resonated deep within their very essence. Some, seized by primal fear, scattered in disarray, their wings beating frantically against the charged atmosphere in a desperate attempt to flee the inescapable. Others, overcome with remorse, wept openly, their tears mingling with the dust of the desecrated mountain. Still others, their spirits broken, collapsed to their knees, heads bowed in abject surrender, fully cognizant of the fate that awaited them. Yet, a defiant few remained, clinging fiercely to the last vestiges of their pride, their eyes blazing with a defiant spark even in the face of utter defeat. But defiance, however bold, could not alter the course of divine justice. All, regardless of their reaction, would ultimately face the same inescapable fate. Then, Michael's voice, amplified by the power of the heavens, resonated through the valleys, echoing off the surrounding peaks like a thunderclap, leaving no room for doubt or denial. Samiaza, Azazel, Armoros, Barakel, and all those who abandoned your celestial posts and defiled the daughters of men, your reign is over. From the heavens descended chains, ethereal yet unbreakable, shimmering with an otherworldly light. These were not forged of iron, nor of any earthly material, but crafted from pure authority, tempered in the fires of righteousness, impervious to corruption, an embodiment of divine law. Each link in these celestial chains represented a sentence, each ring a definitive verdict. This was not punishment delivered in the heat of rage, but justice meted out with deliberate precision, a judgment that had been patiently awaited for far too long. The Watchers, beings who had once stood radiant and honored in the courts of God, now found themselves bound, trembling under the crushing weight of their own disastrous choices. Samiaza, their leader, the one who had instigated their rebellion, stepped forward, his once luminous wings now dulled and shadowed, their brilliance diminished by the weight of his sin. "We did not intend for this," he said, his voice cracking with a mixture of fear and regret. "We only desired what was beautiful." Michael, however, did not respond with anger, but with a profound sadness, his words carrying the weight of celestial disappointment. "You were granted beauty beyond comprehension," he declared. "You stood in the very presence of the Holy One, and yet you traded it all for dust." The chains snaked around Samiaza, binding him tightly, and he crumpled to the ground in silent despair. As each Watcher was bound, the very earth responded, groaning under the weight of their collective transgression. The mountain cracked and fissures spread across its surface. Then, a chasm, deep and dark, yawned open beneath them, a gateway to a subterranean abyss. The Book of Enoch describes this moment as the earth swallowing the guilty, sealing them beneath for 70 generations, a timeless prison where they would contemplate the magnitude of their sins. These angels, once robed in the radiant light of heaven, now descended into the suffocating darkness, banished from the sight of the sky until the day of final judgment, and even then, there would be no promise of mercy. Meanwhile, Raphael, swift and resolute, completed his appointed task in the desolate wilderness of Dudiel, a place far removed from any city, amidst jagged rocks and barren, unforgiving land. There, he located Azazel, the angel who had imparted the knowledge of weaponry to men and the art of seduction to women, corrupting the very fabric of human existence. Azazel offered no resistance, no protest, when he saw the archangel. Perhaps he had finally comprehended the gravity of his actions. Perhaps he had known all along that this was the inevitable price for his transgression. Raphael simply raised his hand, and the celestial chains descended, binding Azazel with inexorable force. The fallen angel was then cast into a pit, and a shower of jagged stones rained down upon him, obscuring his face, burying him in the very earth he had defiled. "Let him never see the light again," came the divine command, echoing across the desolate landscape. And so it was. Azazel screamed, but his cries were swallowed by the void, never to be heard again. Gabriel's task, however, was of a different nature. He was not charged with binding or burying, but with sowing discord and reaping the whirlwind. He whispered insidious doubts into the hearts of the Nephilim, stirring up their inherent pride and amplifying their latent paranoia. And so, the giants, those formidable beings born of forbidden unions, turned against one another with a fury that knew no bounds. One accused another of betrayal, their voices booming with resentment and suspicion. One envied the unparalleled strength of his brother, their eyes glinting with malice and envy. Another thirsted for the blood of his kin, consumed by an insatiable lust for power. What had once been a unified reign of terror, a symphony of destruction orchestrated by the Nephilim, descended into a bloody and chaotic civil war. Titans clashed, their earth-shattering blows causing mountains to tremble. Forests burned, consumed by the inferno of their rage. The ground became a vast battlefield, soaked in the ichor of fallen monsters. And all the while, humanity, those who had once trembled in fear before the Nephilim, watched from the shadows, their hearts filled with a mixture of trepidation and burgeoning hope. The same creatures they had once considered invincible were now tearing themselves apart, victims of their own hubris and unchecked aggression. The prayers of the faithful, once whispered in hushed tones, now grew louder, gaining strength with each fallen giant. A flicker of hope ignited in the darkness, fueled by the realization that the Nephilim were not, after all, invincible. The Nephilim, in their unrestrained violence, had become the architects of their own destruction. And Gabriel, unseen, passed over them like a baleful wind over a raging fire, watching as it consumed itself, reducing everything to ashes. Back on Mount Hermon, the last of the Watchers fell, their rebellion crushed, their fate sealed. Michael stood alone on the summit, a solitary figure of divine authority. The chains had been delivered, the verdict carried out with unwavering precision. The mountain groaned, the very stones weeping for the fallen. And then, silence descended, a profound stillness that had been absent for centuries. Silence. No shrieks of defiance, no blasphemous pronouncements, no desperate cries for mercy. Just the quiet aftermath of divine justice, a moment of profound reckoning. The cursed oath had been broken, the rebellion had been quelled. The archangels then returned to heaven, their mission accomplished. Before the throne of God, they bowed in reverence. It is done, they declared in unison. The Watchers are bound. The Nephilim are falling. The world is ready for cleansing. And the Lord, his eyes burning with both righteous fire and infinite mercy, looked upon the earth. There remained one final task, one that held the promise of redemption. One man had remained faithful, a beacon of light in a world consumed by darkness. One man had walked with God even as the world descended into chaos. That man was Noah, and the time had come for him to build, to prepare for the storm that would reshape the world. The flood was coming, not as an act of blind wrath, but as a necessary reset, not to destroy without purpose, but to cleanse, to purify, so that life might begin anew. And in that act of divine intervention, justice and mercy would converge, creating a new covenant between God and mankind. The story of the Watchers had come to an end, their rebellion extinguished, their fate sealed. But the story of mankind was far from over. Cities became breeding grounds for these insidious spirits, slithering into the cracks of civilization, their influence imperceptible yet pervasive. They didn't confine themselves to grand halls or public squares. Instead, they crept into the most intimate spaces, homes where laughter once echoed, now filled with an unsettling silence. They waited patiently at the edge of hearts, those vulnerable hearts that had relinquished their guard, leaving themselves exposed to the darkness that sought to consume them. These entities were not mere tormentors, content with inflicting pain and suffering. Their malice was far more elaborate, their methods far more insidious. They were deceivers, masters of manipulation, skilled at twisting truth into falsehood. They did not roar, did not announce their presence with thunderous pronouncements of doom. Instead, they whispered, their voices like the rustling of dry leaves, barely audible yet capable of planting seeds of doubt and despair. They did not destroy with brute force, with overwhelming might that crushed all in its path. Their weapons were far more subtle, far more effective. Lies, spun with exquisite precision, crafted to exploit the deepest insecurities and darkest desires. They wore the voices of lost loved ones, echoing in the silence of grief, promising reunion and solace. They adopted the faces of hidden fears, those lurking anxieties that gnawed at the edges of consciousness, offering a twisted sense of control. They presented the promise of secret power, of forbidden knowledge that could elevate mortals to godlike status. And always their sustenance was not the flesh, not the ephemeral vessel of the body. They fed on the soul, that intangible essence that defined humanity. They devoured the trust of a child, that innocent belief in the goodness of the world, replacing it with cynicism and suspicion. They consumed the hope of a widow, that fragile ember of resilience that kept her from succumbing to despair, snuffing it out with relentless reminders of her loss. They preyed on the prayer of a desperate man, that last refuge of faith in the face of overwhelming adversity, twisting it into a hollow echo of unanswered pleas. All were their prey, all were vulnerable to their subtle and relentless assault. These spirits, remnants of a forgotten age, carried within them the memory of the Watchers, the fallen angels who had defied the divine order. They remembered the ancient knowledge, the forbidden arts that had once been within their grasp. They recalled the ways of seduction and war, the strategies of manipulation and conquest. And though they had been stripped of their physical bodies, relegated to the ethereal realm, they retained the cunning of their angelic bloodline, the innate understanding of how to exploit the weaknesses of mortal minds. They used men and women as puppets, their strings invisible yet unbreakable. They twisted the legacy of their fathers, the Watchers, into new and insidious forms, adapting their ancient knowledge to the ever-changing landscape of human civilization. False religions rose in their honor, their doctrines twisted and perverted to serve the desires of these unseen masters. Idols were carved in their image, grotesque representations of their power and influence, inspiring both fear and reverence. Rituals were performed to gain their favor, elaborate ceremonies steeped in blood and sacrifice. Sacrifices, human and otherwise, were offered to these invisible lords of ruin, their insatiable hunger demanding constant appeasement. Their influence grew like a creeping vine, entwining itself around the foundations of society, poisoning the well of human potential. Empires unknowingly bowed to them, their leaders seduced by promises of power and glory. Cultures absorbed their teachings under different names, masking the true source of their corruption with layers of tradition and custom. These spirits did not need to be seen to be worshipped. Their power lay in their ability to manipulate belief, to shape perception, to control the very thoughts of mankind. They craved obedience, that unquestioning submission that extinguished free will and transformed mortals into mere instruments of their desires. And humanity, ever hungry for shortcuts to power, ever willing to sacrifice principle for expediency, gave it freely. The knowledge the Watchers once gave openly, freely sharing their forbidden wisdom with the daughters of men, was now passed in whispers, in secret rites, in blood oaths that bound initiates to eternal servitude, in dreams filled with flame, visions of power and glory that seduced the unwary. The demons shaped civilizations not by force, not by direct intervention that would reveal their presence. They learned that suggestion was far more lasting than conquest, that the subtle planting of ideas could have a far more profound and enduring impact than any military campaign. They understood the power of propaganda, the art of persuasion, the ability to manipulate the collective consciousness of humanity. But not all of humanity yielded. There were still those who walked with God, who held fast to their faith in the face of overwhelming darkness. Enoch, the prophet who had seen the heavens, who had witnessed the fall of the Watchers and the rise of the Nephilim, warned of these spirits, his voice a beacon of hope in a world consumed by despair. "Do not fear them," he wrote, his words etched in stone for generations to come. "They have no power over the righteous." And it was true. While demons could torment the flesh, inflicting pain and suffering on the physical body, and tempt the mind, planting seeds of doubt and despair in the fragile landscape of human consciousness. They could not touch the soul sealed in truth, the spirit that was anchored in faith and unwavering devotion. Those who trusted in the Most High became like mountains unmoved, their foundations rooted in the bedrock of divine grace. Demons could scratch at their walls, testing their defenses, probing for weaknesses, but they could not enter, could not penetrate the armor of faith that protected them from the darkness. Yet even among the faithful, the influence of these spirits was felt, a subtle and insidious presence that threatened to undermine the very foundations of their belief. They turned brother against brother, sowing discord and animosity within families and communities. They whispered doubts into the ears of prophets, questioning their visions, challenging their authority, attempting to lead them astray. They surrounded the people of God like wolves around a flock, patiently waiting for an opportunity to pounce, to isolate the weak, to devour the vulnerable. Enoch understood their persistence, their relentless pursuit of human souls. They had been cursed to wander the earth until the final judgment, their fate sealed, their destiny intertwined with the fate of mankind. And until that day, they would never stop seeking to devour what they could not become, to corrupt what they could not create, to destroy the beauty and goodness that they had forfeited when they chose rebellion. They had once lived as giants, beings of immense power and influence. Now they lived as ghosts, shadows of their former selves, driven by envy and fueled by despair. In time, the world began to forget where they came from, to dismiss their existence as mere superstition or folklore. The story of the Nephilim faded into myth, relegated to the realm of ancient legends and forgotten tales. The Watchers became legend, their deeds exaggerated and embellished over centuries of retelling, their true nature obscured by the mists of time. But the spirits remained, a constant and unseen presence lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance to reassert their influence. In every age, they adapted, shifting their tactics, changing their identities to suit the prevailing culture. In every generation, they wore new names, adopting the personas of local deities and mythical figures to better deceive and manipulate their victims. Baal, Molech, Asmodeus, they became demons of plague, of wrath, of lust, of deceit, each embodying a different aspect of human weakness and corruption. And still they whispered, their voices like the rustling of dry leaves, barely audible yet capable of planting seeds of doubt and despair. Still they stirred war and pride, fueling conflict and ambition, driving men to acts of unspeakable cruelty. Still they waited for hearts to leave the path of light, to stray from the narrow road of righteousness, to succumb to the temptations of the flesh. But even as their presence spread, even as their influence deepened, so did the promise of their end, the unwavering assurance that their reign of terror would not last forever. In his visions, Enoch saw their final fate, the ultimate consequence of their rebellion against the divine order. He saw them gathered at the day of judgment, no longer invisible, no longer unchecked, their power stripped away, their true nature exposed for all to see. He saw them bound by the same chains that had held the Watchers, dragged from the corners of the world, screaming in defiance, their voices echoing with hatred and despair. He saw them cast into the same fire, into the place prepared not just for the fallen angels, but for their cursed children as well, a fiery abyss where darkness reigned and suffering was eternal. There they would burn not with cleansing, not with the purifying flame of redemption, but with consequence, the inevitable result of their choices, the just reward for their rebellion. There they would be silenced forever, their voices extinguished, their influence eradicated. Until that day, however, they remained a constant threat to the spiritual well-being of mankind. The Apostle Peter would later write that the devil prowls like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour, his words echoing Enoch's ancient warnings. But Peter was not speaking of Satan alone, not referring to a single entity of pure evil. He spoke also of these ancient spirits, the spirits of the Nephilim, the ones who roam the ruins of mankind's choices, feeding on every fear, every sin, every moment of weakness. They are not myths, not figments of imagination, not relics of a bygone era. They are not gone, not banished to some distant realm beyond the reach of human experience. And though they cannot be seen, though they operate in the shadows, they can be resisted, their influence can be overcome. The faithful need not fear, for the power that binds them is greater than the power that drives them. They tremble at the name of the Lord, their very essence recoiling from the sound of divine authority. They flee from the truth, unable to withstand the light of unwavering faith. They shatter before holiness, their illusions dispelled, their power rendered impotent. Enoch reminded his readers, "Call upon the Most High, and they will flee. Trust in His name, and they cannot stand against you." Mina. And so the world entered a new phase of its long war, a conflict not against flesh and blood, but against powers unseen, against spiritual forces of darkness that sought to enslave the souls of mankind. The giants were dead, their physical presence eradicated from the earth. The Watchers were bound, imprisoned in a celestial jail, awaiting their final judgment. But their legacy walked the earth in shadows, a persistent and insidious presence that threatened to corrupt all that was good and pure. Yet for every whisper of darkness, there remained a voice of light, a beacon of hope in the midst of despair. And for every soul tempted by these spirits, there was still a choice, a moment of decision that could determine their eternal destiny. For the final battle had not yet come, the ultimate confrontation between good and evil that would decide the fate of the universe. But it was written, it was promised, and the spirits knew they would not wander forever, that their time was limited, that their reign of terror would eventually come to an end. He wasn't taken to a typical heaven, nor was he returned to earth. Instead, he was ushered into a realm beyond the constraints of time itself. It was a place where the echoes of the past, the immediacy of the present, and the possibilities of the future coalesced into a single, eternal moment. And within that extraordinary space, Enoch beheld the throne of the Ancient of Days once more, radiating a light that defied description. Surrounding the throne stood legions of angels, tens of thousands strong, their very beings consumed with reverence. But this time there was something new, something unexpected. Beside the throne stood the very figure Enoch had witnessed before, resplendent, majestic, radiating an aura of profound authority. He was seated in a position of honor, a place of unparalleled significance. Then, the voice of God, a sound like the collision of galaxies, thundered across the heavens. "Behold, the Son of Man." Enoch's heart pounded in his chest. He understood, with a certainty that resonated deep within his soul, that this was no ordinary title. It was not merely a poetic name, a symbolic designation. This was identity, divine and eternal, pre-existent before the dawn of creation. He was chosen, God declared, before the very foundations of the world were laid. In him dwelt all righteousness, the very essence of moral perfection. Through him, the hidden things of the universe would be revealed, the secrets of existence unveiled. By him, the wicked would be judged, their deeds laid bare for all to see. And through him, the righteous would be saved, redeemed from the clutches of sin and death. As the Khan spoke, the vision intensified, expanded, encompassing the sweep of millennia. Enoch witnessed events that would not come to pass for thousands of years into the future. He saw the earth transformed, no longer the pristine world of his time, but a place teeming with cities, choked with humanity. These were people who had forgotten God, who had traded the truth for fleeting pleasures and empty promises. Idols stood in every square, grotesque effigies of false gods demanding worship. Injustice reigned on every throne, and truth was twisted into lies, deceit masquerading as wisdom. He saw rulers mocking the divine, their hearts hardened by pride and arrogance. He saw priests, not as shepherds of their flock, but as power-hungry wolves, preying on the vulnerable and exploiting their faith. He saw the innocent crushed under the weight of oppression, the poor and marginalized forgotten by those who claimed to lead them. And in the midst of this encroaching darkness, Enoch saw the Son of Man descend. But he did not arrive in a blaze of fire and fury, as a conquering king might. Not at first. Instead, he came in flesh, born of a woman, a vulnerable infant, small and seemingly insignificant. Enoch was taken aback. This radiant figure, this divine judge, would be born as a child, would walk among men, would experience the same frailties and limitations, would eat and sleep and bleed like them. He watched him grow, a beacon of hope in a world shrouded in despair. He saw him heal the sick, mend broken bodies and spirits alike. He saw him raise the dead, defying the very laws of nature. He heard him speak words that pierced hearts and shook kingdoms, challenging the status quo and offering a path to redemption. He saw crowds flock to him, drawn by his message of love and forgiveness. But then he saw betrayal. He saw those same crowds turn against him, swayed by fear and manipulation. He saw rulers spit upon him, their faces contorted with hatred. He saw priests condemn him, twisting the scriptures to justify their malice. He saw soldiers scourge him, their whips tearing into his flesh. He saw a cross, a symbol of suffering and shame. He saw a crown of thorns, pressed cruelly onto his head. He saw blood spilled on stone, a crimson tide washing over the sins of the world. Enoch cried out, his voice filled with anguish. Why must he suffer? Why this agony for one so pure? And the voice of God, though laced with sorrow, was firm and resolute. Because mercy requires sacrifice. Justice demands a price. Sin brings death, and only one who is both God and man can overcome it. Through his suffering, the gate to salvation will open. Through his death, the curse of sin will be broken. Through his resurrection, life will triumph over death itself. Then the vision shifted once more. Enoch saw the tomb, empty and silent. He saw the stone rolled away, not by human hands, but by the force of angels. He saw light bursting forth, illuminating the darkness and signaling a new dawn. He saw the Son of Man rise, not as a ghost or a specter, but alive, glorified, transformed. Angels bowed before him, their voices raised in joyous praise. The righteous dead rose with him, their spirits freed from the bondage of death. Death was defeated, its power broken, and all of heaven rejoiced. But the vision wasn't complete. There was more to see, more to understand. Enoch saw the final day, the culmination of all things. The sky split asunder, revealing the glory of God. Trumpets sounded, heralding the arrival of the King. The Son of Man descended once more, no longer in humility, but in power and majesty. His eyes were like flames of fire, piercing through deception and revealing the truth. His voice was like the roar of many waters, a sound that shook the very foundations of the universe. The armies of heaven followed him, an unstoppable force of righteousness. Thrones toppled, kingdoms crumbled, and nations trembled before his might. The books were opened, revealing every deed, every thought, every secret, bringing them into the light. The righteous were clothed in white, their faces shone with an unearthly radiance. They stood unafraid, their hearts filled with unwavering faith. And the Son of Man spoke to them, his voice filled with love and compassion. Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. But the wicked, those who mocked and oppressed, those who rejected the truth turned away, their faces filled with despair. They were cast into outer darkness, not because he hated them, but because they had chosen darkness over light, self-destruction over salvation. He did not condemn them. They condemned themselves through their own actions. And then Enoch saw the Son of Man seated on his throne, his reign established for all eternity. The angels sang hymns of praise, their voices echoing through the heavens. The righteous wept with joy, their hearts overflowing with gratitude. The curse was gone, the earth was renewed, and creation rejoiced in its restoration. And Enoch understood, with a clarity that banished all doubt, that this was the one he had seen before the flood, the figure he had glimpsed in his visions. This was the hope he had written of, the promise that had sustained him through the darkness. This was the Judge of angels, the Redeemer of man, the Son of Man, the Messiah foretold. The vision began to fade, the images receding into the distance. Enoch found himself once more on the mountain, his face wet with tears, his hands trembling with the weight of what he had witnessed. The angel who stood beside him, his presence a comforting reassurance, spoke. "Write this down, Enoch. The generations to come must know that the Son of Man is coming, and every soul must choose their destiny." And so Enoch obeyed. He wrote, with unwavering conviction, "I saw the Son of Man. He was with the Ancient of Days, and to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom. All peoples, nations, and languages shall serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom is one that shall not be destroyed. And those who trust in him shall not perish, but have life everlasting." It was thousands of years later when Jesus walked the earth, embodying the very essence of the Son of Man. He called himself by one name above all others, the Son of Man, claiming the title as his own. Enoch had seen him in his visions, and now we see him, too, in the pages of Scripture and in the witness of believers throughout the ages. After these profound visions of judgment and these breathtaking glimpses of the Messiah, Enoch was taken into a place unlike any he had encountered before. It was not a throne room, filled with pomp and ceremony. It was not a battlefield of angels, where cosmic struggles played out. It was something quieter, more mysterious, yet no less holy. This realm was the very heart of order itself, a place where time was measured not by the fleeting human calendars, but by the eternal patterns of the divine. Here, Enoch would be shown the architecture of the heavens, the intricate design of creation. He would witness the true calendar, not one of human invention, but one divinely ordained. He would observe the movements of the sun, the moon, and the stars, not as random celestial bodies drifting through the cosmos, but as instruments in the Creator's grand symphony. This vision would become known as the astronomical book, a testament to the order and purpose that underlay all things. His guide in this extraordinary realm was Uriel, the archangel of light and wisdom, a being of immense power and understanding. Uriel stood at the gate between time and eternity, his presence radiating serenity and knowledge. His face was calm, his eyes deep and fathomless, like the night sky filled with untold secrets. "Enoch," he said, his voice resonating with celestial harmony, "you have seen the fall of the Watchers, the consequences of their rebellion. You have witnessed the judgment of the giants, the fruit of their unholy unions. You have beheld the Son of Man, the hope of redemption. Now you will see something that most men ignore, something that lies hidden in plain sight. The order behind creation, the rhythm that binds the heavens to the earth, the very fabric of reality itself. Before them stood gates of light, 12 in the east and 12 in the west, each perfectly aligned, shimmering with ethereal energy. These, Uriel explained, his voice filled with reverence, are the gates through which the sun enters and exits the sky, not as a mere metaphor, but as an actual structure, a cosmic architecture. The sun you see is not merely a ball of fire, but a chariot of blazing light, drawn by forces unseen, guided by the hand of God. It enters the world through one gate, travels its appointed path across the heavens, and exits through another. Each day, without fail, the gates move with the seasons, adjusting to the changing light. In summer, Uriel continued, the sun passes through the northern gates, and the days are long, filled with warmth and light. In winter, it moves through the southern gates, and the days shorten, allowing for rest and reflection. Nothing is random, Enoch. Everything obeys the divine order. Everything fulfills its intended purpose. Then, Enoch saw the moon, cool and silent, its surface reflecting the sun's light. It waxed and waned in a precise cycle, a celestial dance perfectly choreographed. 29.5 days, each cycle a testament to the Creator's precision. He learned that the moon marked the months marked the seasons, and the seasons marked the years. It was all part of a vast celestial mechanism, perfectly timed, utterly obedient to its Creator. The moon listens to the word of God, Uriel said, his eyes filled with ancient wisdom. It knows its course, and it does not stray. If men followed the moon rightly, they would remember sacred time, they would honor the cycles of creation. But they have forgotten the way, They have become lost in their own fleeting pursuits. Enoch was then taken further into the heavens, into a chamber filled with stars, countless points of light shimmering against the infinite darkness. Each star moved along a fixed path, shining with purpose, its light contributing to the overall harmony of the cosmos. Some moved quickly. These were the planets, each with its own unique orbit and influence. Others turned slowly across the sky, marking times and signs, guiding travelers and marking the changing seasons. These are the luminaries, Uriel explained. They do not exist for worship, but for witness. They declare the glory of God, their light a constant reminder of His creative power. They guide the traveler, pointing the way home. They tell the seasons of the earth, marking the times of planting and harvest, of growth and rest. But men have corrupted them, twisted their purpose, turned them into idols, used them for sorcery, divination, and vanity, seeking to control the future rather than trust in the Creator. Enoch stood in awe, his heart filled with wonder. He realized that what men called astronomy had once been sacred, a gift given to humanity to understand the Creator's order, to appreciate the intricate beauty of creation, not to replace Him with false gods and empty rituals. The stars were sermons written in light, each one proclaiming the glory of God. The sun, a daily call to rise and embrace the day. The moon, a mirror of faithfulness, its phases reflecting the constancy of God's love. Time itself was designed to keep humanity in rhythm with heaven, to align their lives with the divine order. The seventh day, the Sabbath, was not just a command, but a fundamental principle woven into the very fabric of the cosmos, a time for rest, reflection, and communion with the Creator. Then, Uriel revealed something even more startling, a secret hidden from the eyes of many. The year, he said, his voice filled with solemnity, as ordained by God, is 364 days, not 365 as modern calendars would later claim, based on pagan solar cycles or lunar superstitions. It is a perfect structure, precisely aligned with the divine order. 52 weeks, 7 days each, all aligning with the Sabbath, a year that never shifted, never drifted, a holy time perfectly measured. Enoch recorded everything, diligently writing down the names of the months, the rising and setting points of each gate, the shifting of light and shadow, the ebb and flow of the celestial tides. He charted the movement of the stars, the changes of the moon, the harmony of the equinoxes and solstices. This wasn't just science. It was worship in motion, a celebration of the Creator's genius. It was sacred geometry, divine chronology, a testament to the order and purpose that underlay all things. Uriel looked deeply into Enoch's eyes, his gaze penetrating to the very depths of his soul. "You must preserve this knowledge, Enoch," he said, his voice filled with urgency. "Because in time men will forget. They will follow other calendars, ones based on conquest, on empire, on moon worship, on the cycles of gods that are no gods at all. They will forget the appointed times, the sacred rhythms of creation. They will celebrate on the wrong days, honoring false gods and empty traditions. They will lose the rhythm, the connection to the divine heartbeat. And when they do, they will drift from the heart of God, becoming lost in a sea of confusion and despair." And Enoch saw that it would happen, just as Uriel had foretold. He saw priests replacing sacred days with profitable ones, trading truth for earthly gain. He saw kings changing festivals for political gain, manipulating the calendar to consolidate their power. He saw men abandon the Creator's order for convenience, for the sake of fleeting pleasures and personal ambition. He saw the Sabbath forgotten, relegated to the margins of life. The feasts were moved, the sacred year disfigured, and with each distortion, the people grew more distant from the God who had woven time into their very bones, who had created them to live in harmony with His divine rhythm. But Enoch also saw something else, a glimmer of hope in the distant future. He saw a time, far in the future, when his writings would be rediscovered, when those who hungered for truth would read the astronomical book and realize what had been lost, what had been abandoned in the pursuit of worldly gain. He saw men and women realigning their lives with the true calendar, not for legalistic adherence or outward show, but for the love of God, a desire to return to divine order, a remembrance of sacred time, a longing to live in harmony with the Creator's design. And then Enoch understood the profound weight of what he had been shown, the immense responsibility that had been placed upon his shoulders. The sun, the moon, the stars, they were not just ornaments of the sky, beautiful but ultimately insignificant. They were keepers of covenant, witnesses to God's faithfulness, reminders of his eternal promise. Every sunrise was a reminder that the Creator is faithful, that his love endures. Every full moon a sign that his cycles endure, that his plans will come to pass. Every change of season a promise that the world still moves under his hand, that he has not abandoned his creation. Enoch bowed his head, his heart overflowing with gratitude. He thanked Uriel for his guidance, for his wisdom, and for the trust he had placed in him. And he began to write, meticulously recording everything he had seen and learned. The astronomical book of Enoch would become one of the most detailed records of celestial order in ancient history, a testament to the divine design that underlay all creation. It was not astrology, a false science that sought to predict the future through the movements of the stars. It was not superstition, a collection of unfounded beliefs and rituals. It was revelation, a direct glimpse into the heart of God, a testament to his creative power and his unwavering faithfulness. It was the voice of heaven engraved in light, calling men to remember, to return, to realign their lives with the divine order. For in forgetting sacred time, humanity forgets its place in the cosmos, forgets its purpose, forgets its connection to the Creator. But in restoring it, we remember who we are. Dust, yes, but dust that moves in the rhythm of stars, created for communion with the one who measures even time with love. One night, after Enoch had diligently recorded the heavenly calendar, after he had mapped the stars and measured the gates of light, a different kind of revelation came upon him, one that transcended the physical realm and delved into the depths of the spiritual. This was not a journey through the heavens, guided by an angel. It was not a voice from on high, dictating divine pronouncements. It was a dream, yet unlike any dream a man had ever experienced. It came not with confusion or fading symbols, but with crystal clarity and overwhelming power, gripping his very soul. In this dream, Enoch was shown the entire history of the world, from the idyllic paradise of the Garden of Eden to the cataclysmic events of the final judgment, but not as a dry list of dates and events. Instead, he saw it as a living parable, a vibrant tapestry woven with the threads of symbolism, a vision of animals where each creature represented a nation, a people, a prophet, or a king, their interactions revealing the hidden currents of history. He saw a white bull standing alone in a vast green field, basking in the golden light of the sun. It was strong, noble, and innocent, its coat as pure as freshly fallen snow. This was Adam, the first man, created in purity and placed in a world teeming with life, a symbol of innocence and potential. Then, from the white bull came a heifer, gentle and nurturing. This was Eve. They stood side by side, peaceful and whole, their presence radiating harmony and love. Around them, the garden bloomed in radiant color, a kaleidoscope of vibrant hues. Rivers sparkled like liquid diamonds, reflecting the azure sky. Trees bore fruit in abundance, their branches laden with the bounty of creation. And the very presence of God rested upon the land, a tangible blessing that permeated every corner of paradise. But then, a shadow slithered into the scene, a dark serpent coiling through the verdant grass, its eyes gleaming with malice, its tongue flickering with deceit. It whispered insidious lies into the heifer's ear, preying on her curiosity and vulnerability. And soon, the bull followed, succumbing to temptation and doubt. They ate what was forbidden, defying the Creator's command and shattering the harmony of the garden. The light faded, replaced by a growing darkness. The garden withered, its vibrant colors turning to drab shades of gray, and they were cast out of the field, banished from paradise and forced to confront the consequences of their disobedience. From them came two calves, representing the diverging paths of humanity. One white, bearing the mark of righteousness, and one red, stained with the mark of sin. These were Abel and Cain. The red calf, consumed by jealousy and rage, struck the white calf and killed it, spilling innocent blood onto the ground, a tragic foreshadowing of the violence and bloodshed that would plague humanity. The red calf was cursed, marked for his transgression, and driven into the wilderness, forever separated from the blessings of God. And from Adam came another line, a white calf named Seth, a symbol of hope and redemption. From Seth descended more white cattle, men and women who walked with God, seeking to honor him with their lives. Enoch, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, each generation a testament to the enduring power of faith. Then came a figure Enoch recognized, his heart leaping with a mixture of awe and humility. Himself, a white bull among the others, set apart by his devotion and his willingness to listen to the voice of God. He was receiving light from above, a divine illumination that guided his steps and filled him with wisdom. But then, the stars began to fall, disrupting the celestial order and plunging the world into chaos. Enoch saw angels, represented as bright stars, descend from heaven, their faces no longer radiating divine light, but clouded with lust and rebellion. They took wives from among the cattle, drawn to their earthly beauty and their sensual desires. And from these unions came strange and monstrous creatures, hybrids of heaven and earth, elephants, camels, donkeys, giants, the Nephilim, each a grotesque parody of God's creation. They trampled the fields, consuming everything in sight, leaving behind a trail of destruction and despair. The white cattle cried out in anguish, scattered and hiding in caves, seeking refuge from the encroaching darkness. But the destruction only grew, fueled by the insatiable appetites of the fallen stars and their monstrous offspring. The fallen stars taught the animals dark arts, sharing secrets that were never meant for human hands. They showed them how to fight, how to manipulate, how to destroy, corrupting their hearts and turning them against one another. The world became a battleground, a swirling vortex of violence and chaos. Then, as a beacon of hope in the midst of the darkness, for great figures descended from heaven, their presence radiating power and authority. Angels of light, sent by God to restore order and bring justice to the earth. Enoch recognized them. Michael, the warrior, Gabriel, the messenger, Raphael, the healer, and Uriel, the illuminator. They began to act, each playing a crucial role in the unfolding drama. One bound the fallen stars, shackling them in chains of darkness and confining them to the abyss. Another turned the monstrous animals against one another, sowing discord and infighting among the forces of evil. A third whispered to a single white bull, one who stood apart from the others, faithful and obedient, willing to listen to the divine guidance. This was Noah, a man of righteousness in a world consumed by wickedness. Enoch saw Noah build a great wooden vessel, a symbol of salvation in a world destined for destruction. The sky darkened, ominous clouds gathering overhead. Rain fell in torrents, unleashing a deluge that threatened to engulf the entire earth. The earth split open, releasing water from the depths, unleashing the full force of God's judgment. Every animal that walked the land perished, drowned in the rising waters, except for those safely sheltered in the vessel, those who had heeded God's warning and sought refuge in His grace. When the flood receded, the ark rested on a mountain, a symbol of hope amidst the devastation. A new beginning had arrived, a chance for humanity to rebuild and restore the world in accordance with God's will. From Noah came 3 bulls, representing the 3 sons of Noah who would repopulate the earth: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. They spread across the earth, their descendants shaping the course of nations. Some of their children remained white, faithful to God, seeking to live in accordance with His teachings. Others turned red, black, or spotted, their hearts hardened by sin, their actions driven by selfishness and pride. Nations began to rise, empires emerged, and the tapestry of human history continued to unfold. Enoch watched the spread of humanity with sorrow, his heart aching for those who had turned away from God, who had traded truth for fleeting pleasures and empty promises. Many forgot God, their minds consumed by worldly ambitions. They turned to idols, crafting false gods to worship and serve. They embraced pride, exalting themselves above others. They engaged in war, shedding innocent blood and perpetuating the cycle of violence. But among the chaos and despair, one white bull stood apart, a beacon of hope in a world shrouded in darkness. This was Abraham, a man of unwavering faith, a patriarch who would shape the destiny of nations. Enoch saw him leave his homeland, led by a divine call, venturing into the unknown with only his faith as his guide. From Abraham came Isaac, the son of promise, the heir to the covenant. Then came Jacob, the father of the 12 tribes of Israel, the chosen people of God. From Jacob came 12 bulls, the sons who would lead the tribes of Israel, each with their own unique character and destiny. The tribes multiplied, their numbers growing exponentially, and they became a nation, a people set apart for a special purpose. Enoch saw them go down into Egypt, symbolized by dark beasts, dogs and wolves, representing the oppression and cruelty of the Egyptian empire. There they were enslaved, forced to labor under harsh conditions, their spirits broken by the weight of oppression. They were beaten, burdened, and stripped of their dignity, their cries rising to heaven, pleading for deliverance. Then, a single white bull arose, a leader chosen by God to deliver his people from bondage. This was Moses, a man of humility and courage, a prophet who would stand before kings and challenge the might of empires. He stood before the beasts of Egypt, confronting Pharaoh and demanding the release of his people. He called down plagues, unleashing the power of God upon the land, forcing the Egyptians to acknowledge the supremacy of the Creator. And he led the cattle through a parted sea, a miraculous escape from the clutches of their enemies. Behind them, the water closed over their pursuers, swallowing them whole and securing the freedom of the Israelites. The white cattle wandered in the wilderness, tested and refined by the harsh conditions. They received the law, the commandments of God, inscribed on tablets of stone, a guide for righteous living. They built a tabernacle, a tent for the Lord's presence, a portable sanctuary where they could worship and commune with their God. But even there, in the very presence of the divine, some turned back to idols, succumbing to temptation and forsaking their covenant with God. Time passed, generations rose and fell. Enoch saw the rise of judges, men and women chosen by God to lead and protect his people. Then came kings, earthly rulers who sought to establish their own power and glory. He saw a great white bull crowned and seated on a throne, a symbol of righteous leadership and divine favor. This was David, a king after God's own heart, a shepherd who led his people with compassion and justice. He saw a house built of stone and gold, Solomon's temple, a magnificent edifice dedicated to the worship of God. The glory of the Lord filled it, a tangible manifestation of his presence. For a while, peace reigned, and the cattle prospered, enjoying the blessings of God's favor. But the cattle grew proud, forgetting the source of their blessings, and their hearts turned away from God. The nation split, dividing into 10 tribes to the north and 2 to the south, each kingdom pursuing its own path. The northern tribes turned black, mingling with spotted herds, embracing pagan practices and forsaking the law of God. The Assyrians came, wild beasts from the north, who devoured the northern tribes, scattering them and obliterating their identity. The northern tribes vanished, lost to the annals of history, a tragic example of the consequences of disobedience. Then the southern kingdom fell into sin, mirroring the transgressions of their northern brethren. Lions, wolves, and eagles descended, representing the Babylonian Empire, a force of ruthless destruction. The city was burned, its buildings reduced to rubble. The temple was destroyed, its sacred objects plundered and desecrated. The white cattle were taken in chains, dragged into exile, far from their homeland. But even in exile, a remnant remained faithful, clinging to their faith amidst the trials and tribulations. They prayed, they remembered, they longed for their homeland, and they refused to abandon their covenant with God. They returned, their hearts filled with hope and determination, and rebuilt the temple, restoring the walls and reestablishing the worship of God. But the hearts of the cattle remained divided, torn between faith and worldliness. Some sought the Lord with all their hearts, desiring to live in accordance with his will. Others sought power, wealth, and prestige, pursuing their own selfish ambitions. And Enoch wept, his heart breaking at the sight of his people's divided loyalties. Then came a moment unlike any before, a pivotal point in the history of salvation. A new figure appeared, not a bull, but a lamb, small, gentle, and shining with an unearthly light, a symbol of innocence, purity, and sacrifice. Enoch watched in awe as the lamb walked among the cattle, healing their wounds, both physical and spiritual, leading them gently towards a path of righteousness. But the beasts grew angry, their hearts hardened by pride and prejudice. They rejected the lamb's message of love and forgiveness, clinging to their own traditions and self-righteousness. They captured the lamb, subjecting him to mockery, abuse, and torture. They killed it, spilling innocent blood onto the earth, a sacrifice that would atone for the sins of the world. For a moment, the world went dark, as if the sun itself had veiled its face in sorrow. But then, the Lamb stood again, alive and radiant, his resurrection shattering the power of death and paving the way for eternal life. And behind him rose many more white lambs, followers of the Lamb, disciples of love, united in their faith and their commitment to spreading the message of salvation. Light spread across the field, illuminating the darkness and offering hope to a world in despair. Enoch saw the end approaching, the culmination of all things. Thrones descended from the sky, shimmering with celestial glory. The Lord of the sheep sat upon his seat of judgment, his presence radiating power and authority. The wild beasts were gathered, summoned to face the consequences of their actions. Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome, all the empires of the world, represented by terrifying animals, were judged for their cruelty, their oppression, and their rejection of God. They were cast into a burning abyss, their power extinguished, their reign of terror brought to an end. The white cattle were transformed, their earthly bodies replaced with radiant forms, their flesh becoming light, shining with the glory of God. They stood tall, clothed in righteousness, their faces radiating joy and peace. The earth was renewed, purged of all wickedness and restored to its former glory. A great house descended from the sky, a golden city, the New Jerusalem, the dwelling place of God with his people. Rivers flowed from its center, symbolizing the life-giving power of the Holy Spirit. Trees of life grew along the banks, bearing fruit that would heal the nations. There was no more death, no more pain, only peace, only joy, only the eternal presence of God. Enoch awoke, trembling, his face wet with tears, his heart overwhelmed with the weight of what he had witnessed. He reached for his scroll, his hand guided by the hand of God, and wrote it all down, meticulously recording every detail of the vision. He understood, with unwavering certainty, that history was not a cycle of chaos, but a story written by God, a narrative of redemption and restoration. Every generation had its moment of choice, its opportunity to embrace or reject the divine will. Every nation had its reckoning, its moment of accountability before the throne of God. And in the end, it would not be the strong who prevailed, but the faithful, those who trusted in God and obeyed his commandments. The dream was not just a vision of the past, a retelling of familiar events. It was a prophecy of the future, a glimpse into the unfolding drama of human history, a message in symbols, a roadmap in animals, a warning to those who strayed from the path of righteousness, and a promise to those who remained faithful. And through it, Enoch left behind one of the most mysterious and powerful revelations in all of ancient scripture, a testament to the enduring power of faith, the unwavering love of God, and the ultimate triumph of good over evil. Hello, YouTube team. I'm Tien, the owner of the YouTube channel Midnight History. Today, at 2:21 a.m., I received an email notifying me that my YouTube channel has been demonetized due to dishonest content. I am very sad and shocked because I feel my channel has been unfairly and biasedly judged. I sincerely hope the YouTube team will review and reevaluate my channel in detail. My channel revolves around stories about mysterious royal bloodlines such as Merovingian, Knights Templar, and Christianity. These are all real historical events with accurate historical facts such as the existence of the Knights Templar 1119-1312 and the real Merovingian dynasty. Fifth, eighth, helping viewers visualize and question history. All videos are individually written, edited, and produced by me. Scripts are not reused or mass-produced. AI tools only assist drafting. Final structure and review are my own. I respect YouTube's policies and strive to create original, educational, and honest content. Enoch's dream had revealed to him the entire arc of history, a panoramic vision stretching from the very Genesis with the creation of Adam to the rise and inevitable fall of kingdoms, empires etched across the sands of time. But at the heart of this vast, unfolding story, illuminated by divine light, stood one figure above all others, the Lamb. Not a beast of war, dripping with terror and bloodlust. Not a towering king adorned with earthly power and a cold, unyielding gaze. Not even a winged angel, a celestial warrior brandishing a flaming sword. No, this was a humble, unassuming regent lamb. He was gentle, his eyes reflecting a profound compassion. He was pure, untainted by the corruption that plagued the world. And yet, the power residing within him surpassed every earthly throne, dwarfed every sprawling empire, and outshone every distant star in the heavens. This lamb would not merely appear in the dream as a fleeting symbol, a mere representation of hope. He would become the central character, the linchpin in all of creation's redemption, the key to unlocking humanity's salvation. In the visionary tapestry, Enoch saw the lamb walking among the scattered white cattle, a representation of humanity, lost and wandering. He was calling to them with a voice of gentle persuasion, healing their festering wounds with a touch of divine grace, patiently guiding them back from the precipice of utter destruction. The beasts of the world, monstrous figures representing oppressive kingdoms and deceitful false religions, snarled at him, their guttural roars filled with malice. But he did not strike them down with righteous fury. He did not raise a sword in defiance. He did not summon fire from the heavens to consume them. Instead, he loved with an infinite and unwavering devotion. He taught with parables of wisdom and truth. He laid hands on the broken and the marginalized, restoring them to wholeness with his divine touch. And the people followed, some with boundless joy, their hearts overflowing with gratitude, others with suspicion, their minds clouded by doubt and fear. Then, Enoch saw something that shook him to his very core, something that made the very ground beneath him tremble with prophetic dread. The lamb, innocent and spotless, was seized not by the ravenous wild beasts that prowled the edges of civilization, but by his own people, those he had come to save from the encroaching darkness. The white cattle, once lost and helpless, turned against him with a venomous rage. They shouted accusations born of envy and misunderstanding. They cursed his name with bitter contempt, and they handed him over to wolves and vultures, enemies cloaked in the deceptive guise of power and law, men who twisted justice into a weapon of oppression. They beat him mercilessly, their fists raining down upon him. They mocked him with cruel taunts, their words dripping with scorn. They spit upon him, defiling his purity with their own filth. And then, with a chilling lack of remorse, they led him to a desolate hill, a place of execution and despair. Enoch saw them raise him on a crude wooden beam, a symbol of suffering and sacrifice. Nails, forged in the fires of hatred, pierced his limbs, securing him to the instrument of his torment. Blood, pure and crimson, poured from his side, staining the ground with the ultimate price of redemption. The sky turned dark, as if in mourning for the atrocity unfolding below. The stars withdrew their light, refusing to bear witness to such a heinous act. The earth shook violently, as if it could not bear the immense weight of this devastating moment. Enoch wept, his tears flowing freely, blurring the lines of the vision. "Why?" he cried out in anguish, his voice echoing in the vast expanse of the dream. "Makama, why must the lamb die?" And then came the answer, not from a celestial angel with gleaming wings, but from the resonant voice of the Most High, the Creator of all things. Because justice requires sacrifice. Because love cannot redeem from a distance, cannot bridge the chasm of sin with mere words or empty gestures. The curse must be broken, not by brute power or overwhelming force, but by selfless surrender, by the willingness to bear the weight of the world's sins. The blood of the innocent will speak louder than the blood of Abel, his sacrifice a testament to humanity's inherent wickedness. Through this death, the door to life will open, a pathway to eternal salvation unlocked by the ultimate act of love. Zam, the lamb died, his final breath a sigh of resignation. The world fell silent, holding its breath in stunned disbelief. But it was not the end, the final chapter in this tragic tale. Enoch watched, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and anticipation, as the stone was rolled away from the entrance of the tomb. The tomb was empty, the silence broken only by the whispers of the wind. The Lamb rose, not in secrecy, shrouded in darkness, but in radiant light, his form bathed in divine glory. He stood before the world, more glorious than before, a testament to the power of resurrection. Death had no hold on him, its icy grip shattered by the force of his unwavering spirit. The curse had been broken from the inside out, its power nullified by the ultimate sacrifice. Chains fell from souls long bound, their spirits freed from the shackles of sin. Darkness fled before his face, banished by the brilliance of his presence. And everywhere he went, new life followed, blossoming in the barren landscapes of despair. Enoch saw him ascend to the throne beside the Ancient of Days, the eternal ruler of the universe. All of heaven erupted in joyous song, a symphony of praise and adoration. The angels bowed, not with fear or trembling, but with unbridled joy, their wings shimmering with celestial light. The Lamb had conquered, not through violence or domination, but by being slain, by willingly laying down his life for the salvation of humanity. He had won through weakness, his humility disarming the forces of evil. He had triumphed through humility, his gentle spirit shattering the chains of oppression. And because of that ultimate act of sacrifice, all authority in heaven and on earth was given to him. But the vision did not end there, with the resurrection and ascension. Enoch was shown the distant future, a glimpse into the tapestry of time, the time of the final reckoning, the day of judgment. Once more, the Lamb would descend, but not as before, not as a humble servant. This time he came as a king, robed in power and majesty. A judge dispensing justice with unwavering fairness. A warrior of light, leading the charge against the forces of darkness. His eyes blazed like fire, piercing through the shadows of deceit. His voice shook the heavens, a thunderous roar that echoed through eternity. And behind him came the armies of holiness, 10,000 times 10,000, clothed in dazzling white, their faces radiant with righteous purpose. The trumpet sounded, its clarion call signaling the end of days. The skies split open, revealing the glory of the divine realm. And all of creation stood before his throne, awaiting the final judgment. The books were opened, revealing the secrets of every heart, every action, every thought. Every soul was brought forward, their lives laid bare before the piercing gaze of the Lamb. The Lamb did not need to accuse. His presence alone revealed all things, exposing the darkness and illuminating the truth. The righteous, those who had trusted in him, who had walked in humility, who had chosen the path of light, were welcomed with open arms. "Enter," he said, his voice filled with compassion. "Well done, good and faithful servants. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Enter into a realm of eternal peace." They wept with joy, their tears washing away the sorrows of their past lives. They were clothed in garments of light, their imperfections vanishing in the radiant glow of grace. Their scars vanished, replaced by the marks of honor. Their sorrow melted away, replaced by an unyielding joy. They entered into a city where there was no more death, no more pain, no more tears, only eternal bliss. But others stood trembling, their faces etched with fear. These were the ones who had rejected him, who had scorned the truth, who had lived only for themselves, who had trampled the innocent underfoot. They had seen the light and turned away, embracing the darkness with open arms. And now their deeds followed them, a heavy burden weighing down their souls. Not because the Lamb desired their destruction, but because they had refused his invitation, had rejected the opportunity for salvation. With sorrow, his voice heavy with regret, he said, "Depart from me. You chose darkness, and now you must face its consequences. You loved the lie, and now you must live with its deception. You hardened your heart, and now it will remain forever closed to the warmth of divine love." And they were cast into the place of separation, a fire not fueled by vengeance, but by the absence of God's presence, a realm of eternal isolation. Their cries were not of punishment alone, but of unbearable regret, a lament for the opportunities they had squandered. Then Enoch saw the Lamb raise his hands, a gesture of creation and renewal. The heavens and the earth were remade, purified by divine power. The old world passed away like smoke, its imperfections erased. A new world appeared, gleaming like gold, fresh like Eden, a paradise restored. Trees lined rivers of light, their branches laden with fruit. The sky no longer held a sun, for the Lamb himself was its light, illuminating the world with his eternal glory. Nations gathered without borders, united in peace and harmony. People walked without fear, their hearts filled with love and compassion. Joy was endless, a boundless ocean of bliss. And at the center of it all sat the Lamb, no longer slain, but enthroned forever, the eternal ruler of the new creation. Enoch fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the immensity of the vision. The vision faded, its images slowly dissolving into the dawn. He awoke on the mountain, his face wet with tears, his heart burning with the fire of revelation. The angel beside him said, "Write it all down, for this is the hope of all creation. The Lamb is coming, and every soul must decide, must choose their destiny." Remembering the angel's words, Enoch wrote, "I saw the Lamb, I saw his suffering, I saw his glory, and I saw that all judgment was given to him. The righteous will rejoice in his presence. The wicked will flee from his face. Blessed are those who trust in him, for they will inherit eternal life." That vision, written thousands of years before Christ, remains one of the clearest prophecies of the Messiah in all ancient writings. When Jesus came and called himself the Son of Man, he wasn't borrowing a phrase. He was fulfilling a vision given to Enoch, the man who walked with God. And now, through his words, we are invited to walk with the Lamb, to embrace his love and find salvation. 2. After visions of the heavens, after the dream of beasts and the coming of the Lamb, Enoch received one final message. This time it did not come in fire or thunder, not through the unfolding of cosmic scenes or angelic voices. It came in stillness, a letter, a word spoken to the generations yet unborn, a final testimony from a man who had seen the beginning and the end. This message would become known as the Epistle of Enoch, a prophetic letter not written to kings or priests, but to all who would live in the ages to come. Right? The voice said, "For time itself has a shape, and those who live within it must understand the story they belong to." And so Enoch wrote, "Not in symbols, not in animals or stars, but in truth, as clear as stone." He divided history into 10 weeks, 10 great epochs of the world. Each week marked by a turning point, a sacred pattern, a moment when heaven would act decisively in the story of mankind. The first week, Enoch wrote, was the week of beginnings. In this age, Adam was created, the garden was planted, and righteousness still dwelt among men. The fall had come, yes, but the memory of Eden remained fresh. Men still called upon the name of the Lord. This was the age of innocence touched by sorrow, of promise remembered. In the second week came the first great crisis. Darkness spread, the watchers descended, giants were born, and the world was drowned in wickedness. But one man, Noah, was found faithful, and through the ark life was preserved. The flood came not to erase but to cleanse, a divine reset. The week ended in water, but also in covenant. The third week brought the calling of Abraham from among the nations. One man heard the voice of God and obeyed. People were chosen not for privilege but for purpose. Through them, the promise of redemption would be kept alive. They would wander, they would struggle, but they would carry the light. In the fourth week, the law was given. Moses led the people out of bondage. Mount Sinai burned with the fire of holiness. The voice of God thundered. Commandments were carved in stone. A tabernacle was built and the presence of God came to dwell among his people. This was the week of revelation, of structure, of holy discipline. The fifth week saw the rise of a house of glory. The Temple of Solomon stood in splendor, filled with gold and light and song. The kingdom was united. Peace flowed like a river. But beneath the surface, pride stirred. Idolatry crept in. And though the glory remained, cracks had begun to form. The sixth week was the week of scattering. The temple burned. The people were taken into exile. Babylon rose with iron chains and flaming swords. The land of promise became a land of mourning. Yet even in captivity prophets spoke. Hope was not lost. A remnant remained. A promise still flickered in the dark. In the seventh week the exiles returned. A second temple was built, not as glorious, but no less sacred. Walls were restored. Worship resumed, but the hearts of the people were divided. Some loved God, others loved power. Even among the priests corruption grew. The week ended with waiting, with the sense that something greater must come. Then came the eighth week, the week of righteousness. In this time, the chosen one would be revealed. The Son of Man would walk the earth. Righteousness would be planted, not on tablets, but in hearts. The Lamb would suffer. The gospel would spread. The weak would be lifted. The humble would be exalted. And the faithful would inherit eternal glory. In the ninth week, judgment would begin. The works of the wicked would be exposed. The idols of the nations would fall. The earth would be marked for destruction, not out of cruelty, but to prepare for renewal. The righteous would shine. The knowledge of the Lord would cover the earth like water covers the sea. And in the 10th and final week, the end would come. The watchers would be judged. The cursed spirits would be cast down. The first heaven would pass away and a new heaven would appear. God himself would dwell among men. The world would be reborn. Death would be no more. Tears would be wiped away. Eternity would begin. Enoch's hand trembled as he wrote. Not out of fear, but out of awe. He had seen it all. The pattern was not hidden. Time was not a series of accidents. It was a design, a sacred tapestry being woven by unseen hands. Each thread mattered. Each moment carried weight. But the epistle did not end with prophecy. It ended with instruction, my children. Enoch wrote, do not follow the path of the wicked. Do not chase gold and forget the poor. Do not worship idols made by your own hands. Do not harden your hearts when the truth comes near, for the days are numbered, and the books are being written. He warned of false teachers who would rise, of those who would claim to speak for God while chasing their own gain, of those who would twist grace into license and truth into chains. Woe to those, he wrote, who build palaces from injustice. Woe to those who mock the righteous and honor the corrupt, for their end is sealed, and their wealth will burn like straw. But then came a blessing. Blessed are those who walk in truth. Blessed are those who feed the hungry, shelter the stranger, honor the name of the Most High. Their reward is not silver but glory. Their inheritance is not land but life everlasting. And near the end, Enoch passed the scroll to his son Methuselah. Guard this, he said. Teach it to your children, for the day will come when the world forgets. But these words must remain. They are not mine. They belong to the Lord. Rating my Nina, Methuselah wept. Where will you go? Enoch smiled. I go to walk with the one I have always followed. Do not mourn, rejoice, for I will see him face to face. Gamen perdento. And so Enoch's epistle came to a close, not with finality, but with invitation. A letter sent across time. A map drawn in hope. a voice calling from the edge of eternity to every soul who still listens. There is a day appointed that no soul can escape, not the righteous, not the wicked, not kings, nor servants. A day when time stops and eternity begins, when every secret is unveiled, every hidden thought brought into the light. This is the day of judgment, the final reckoning, the moment that Enoch had seen from the beginning. Not in vague symbols or veiled warnings, but with piercing clarity. He saw the heavens torn open. He saw the throne established, and he saw every soul, from the first to the last, called forth to stand before the face of the Most High. It began in stillness, a silence unlike any Enoch had ever felt. Then the stars were peeled back like a curtain, and the light behind them burned with indescribable brilliance. The throne of God appeared not built of stone or gold, but of light and justice and holiness itself. Around it stood the hosts of heaven, angels without number, radiant and silent. And beside the throne, as always, stood the Son of Man. Enoch watched as the earth beneath him dissolved. Mountains melted, seas fled, cities vanished, and all that remained were people. Countless multitudes gathered in awe and terror. Some stood tall, shining with peace. Others trembled, their faces pale, their knees buckling beneath the weight of their own conscience. None could hide, none could run. Then the books were opened, not scrolls of paper or volumes bound by hand, but living records, books of light, of memory, of perfect truth. In them was written every word ever spoken, every act ever committed, every thought whispered in the dark. Nothing was missing. Nothing was distorted. There were no excuses, no loopholes. Each soul saw their own life reflected back to them with complete clarity. The Son of Man rose. His presence silenced all noise. His gaze pierced through flesh and soul. Yet in him was no hatred, only justice and mercy offered to those who had received it. He turned to the righteous first. "Come," he said, "you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world." Writings, the righteous wept not with sorrow, but with overwhelming joy. They remembered their weakness, their struggles, their failures, but they also remembered their faith, their repentance, their clinging to the truth when it cost them everything. And now they were clothed in white robes, not earned, but given, not of their making, but of grace. Their names were found in the book of life. And then the Lamb turned to the others. These were the souls who had rejected him, ignored him, mocked his ways. They had lived for themselves. They had oppressed the poor, exploited the weak, hardened their hearts against compassion. They had worshipped idols made of gold and silver or of their own desires. They had seen the light and turned away. To them the Son of Man said, "Depart from me, you workers of iniquity. I never knew you. You refused truth. You embraced the lie. You served yourself and trampled the innocent. Now your judgment is upon you." Mason Cold. And Enoch saw the angels gather them not in vengeance, but in sorrow. They were cast into the place prepared for rebellion, not made for men, but for the watchers, for the spirits who had corrupted the world from the beginning. This place was fire, but not fire that consumes, fire that reveals, fire that reflects their choices, their regrets, their pride turned to ash. They screamed not just from pain, but from the unbearable weight of knowing they had been given every chance and refused them all. Yet Enoch understood this was not cruelty. This was justice. A God who does not judge evil is not holy. A love that never corrects is not love at all. The wicked were not surprised by their fate. They had known deep down. They had always known. And now the final moment had come. Then Enoch saw a final transformation. The heavens above and the earth below were remade. The old world passed away like smoke carried on the wind. And from the throne God spoke, "Behold, I make all things new. Zevin, a new heaven, a new earth, no more war, no more curse, no more death." The sea was gone. The night was gone. The temple was gone because God himself would dwell with his people. Enoch saw the new Jerusalem, a city of pure gold, descend like a bride from heaven. Its gates never closed. Its walls were transparent like crystal, and at its center was the the light by which all would walk. Rivers flowed from his throne, clear as crystal. Trees of life lined the banks, bearing fruit each month. Their leaves were for the healing of nations, and the people redeemed, transformed, walked in peace, in joy, in eternal communion. They sang songs that no man had heard before. They embraced loved ones once lost, and they looked into the face of God without fear. There was no sun, no moon, for the presence of the Lord was the light of the world. And never again would there be sorrow. Never again would there be crying. The former things had passed away. All had been fulfilled. Enoch stood in silence, watching the completion of the story. He had seen rebellion. He had seen redemption. He had seen the rise and fall of angels and men. And now he saw the purpose for it all. And he wrote, "This is the final judgment. The throne is established. The books are opened. The wicked are cast down. The righteous are lifted up, and the world is made new. Fear the Lord, all nations serve him with gladness, for he is faithful, and his justice is true." Well, good. And in that final sentence, the story found its end and its beginning, a cyclical promise fulfilled. What Enoch saw next transcended mere continuation of judgment. It was a breathtaking vision of restoration, so overwhelmingly beautiful and expansive that words faltered and strained in their attempt to capture its essence. After the last soul had stood before the throne of grace, after the wicked had been justly cast away and the righteous joyfully welcomed into the embrace of eternal light, the story, remarkably, did not conclude. It was then, in the hush of completion, that the Lord spoke again, not with the earth-shattering roar of thunder, but in a calm, definitive finality, a pronouncement that resonated through the very fabric of existence. "Behold, I make all things new," and with those profound words, a cosmic transformation commenced. Creation itself began to shift and reshape. The celestial sky above, once a familiar expanse, was rolled up with deliberate purpose, much like a scroll being carefully stored away. The stars, those distant beacons of light, fell from their celestial moorings like ripe fruit gently detaching from the branches of heavenly orchards. Mountains, ancient and imposing, crumbled into dust, their peaks dissolving into the very earth from which they had risen. Oceans, vast and deep, boiled away, their immense depths no longer needed in this renewed reality. The old earth, scarred by the indelible marks of blood and war, was undone, not in a fit of uncontrolled rage, but with a divine and purposeful intention. This was not mere destruction. It was a sacred rebirth, akin to a seed falling into the fertile ground, only to rise again in magnificent glory, bursting forth with vibrant life. What Enoch witnessed emerge was not merely different. It was perfection incarnate. A new heaven unfolded above, a new earth stretched out below, a new creation entirely untouched by the pervasive stain of the ancient curse. He beheld a city descending from the heavens, shimmering with the incandescent brilliance of eternity. The New Jerusalem, a celestial metropolis not built by the fallible hands of humans, not the product of earthly politics or devastating war, but lovingly crafted by God himself. Its walls were constructed of precious stones, jasper, sapphire, emerald, topaz, each one radiating an inner light that never faded, a testament to its divine origin. The very streets were paved with pure gold, yet so transparently clear as glass, perfectly reflecting the dazzling glory of the one who dwelled within its sacred confines. Gates of pearl, magnificent in their iridescent beauty, stood perpetually open, never closed. For within this city there was no night, no lurking danger, no gnawing fear. This city was not merely a place of dwelling. It was the very heart and soul of the new world, the epicenter of divine presence and eternal life. At its center stood no temple, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb were its temple, their radiant presence permeating every corner, every street, every breath taken within its hallowed boundaries. Enoch saw people, a multitude beyond human comprehension, gathered from every tribe, every tongue, and every nation on earth. Yet, within this diverse assembly, there were no divisions, no lingering hatreds, no tears of sorrow. They walked together in perfect peace and unbroken unity. their hearts intertwined in a symphony of love and understanding. They sang songs of praise and adoration, melodies of celestial beauty not heard since the very first stars were meticulously placed in the vast expanse of the sky. A river of life, as clear as the purest crystal, flowed forth from the very throne of God, winding its way through the heart of the city, bringing life and restoration wherever it touched. Along its banks grew the tree of life, not a singular entity, but many, its roots delving deep into the fertile soil of eternity, its branches reaching wide to embrace all who sought its shade, its fruit abundant and overflowing. Each month, it bore new and delectable fruit, and its leaves possessed the miraculous power of healing for the nations. Enoch, in his divine understanding, comprehended the profound truth. What was once tragically lost in the Garden of Eden had now been gloriously restored and surpassed in magnificence. This was not a mere return to the beginning. It was the ultimate fulfillment of the original promise, a promise of redemption and eternal life. And the people, those who had faithfully endured the trials of life, those who had remained steadfast in their belief, those who had trusted in the unseen hand of God, now beheld the face of their Creator. Not through a veil of mystery, not through the lens of fear, but face to face in uninhibited communion. They bore his name inscribed upon their foreheads, a mark of ownership and belonging. His divine presence illuminated their very souls from within. There was no longer any need for the sun or the moon, for the Lamb was their everlasting light, and they would reign with him forever in glorious eternity. There was no more death, no mourning, no crying, no pain. The former things had passed away, disappearing like a fleeting shadow banished by the radiant dawn. The memories of sorrow and suffering were not erased from their minds, but transformed into something beautiful and meaningful. What had once brought tears of weeping now brought forth understanding, purpose, and profound peace. The trials and tribulations of the world became a powerful testimony of God's glory and unwavering faithfulness. The scars of the past became emblems of beauty, reminders of the redemption that had been purchased at such a great cost. Enoch witnessed the complete fulfillment of every promise, every word spoken by the prophets of old, every longing held within the hearts of the faithful. He saw the place meticulously prepared for those who had walked faithfully with God, just as he had walked, a home where no one was forgotten, where no tear was wasted, where every act of kindness and compassion echoed into the corridors of eternity. He saw the redeemed laughing, embracing, and resting in gardens that never withered or faded. He saw children playing in fields of pure light, elders seated in places of honor and respect, angels walking freely beside mortals, no longer distant or hidden. The vast distance between heaven and earth had vanished completely. The two had become one, united in divine harmony. Enoch's heart swelled within him, not with selfish pride, but with a joy that transcended all earthly expression. This was the very reason he had been called to write. This was the reason he had so diligently obeyed the divine commands. It was so that the world would know that this glorious ending was indeed possible, that behind all the apparent chaos, the trials of judgment, and the profound mysteries of life, there was always a destination, a hope, a home waiting to be discovered. He remembered the scrolls he had entrusted to Methuselah, the warnings, the vivid dreams, the vital messages intended for those who would survive the coming flood. And he saw now, with unwavering certainty, that they had not been in vain. The words had endured through the generations, and the faithful had persevered in their belief. And now, the promised reward was no longer a distant hope. It was a tangible reality, a present inheritance. He turned to the angel standing beside him, his heart filled with wonder and awe. "Is this truly the end?" The angel smiled, a radiant expression of divine joy. "No, Enoch, this is the beginning." And in that profound moment, Enoch understood the true nature of eternity. It was not a static place of stillness, but a dynamic realm of life, of growth, of endless discovery of God's boundless love. A world without decay or corruption, a joy that deepened with each passing moment, a glory that only increased with the passage of time. The new heaven and the new earth were not created merely to replace the old, but to fulfill what the old had only foreshadowed, to dwell with God, not as mere servants, but as beloved sons and daughters, to walk with him, not in fear or trepidation, but in unbridled delight for all of eternity. Enoch bowed his head in humble reverence. He whispered a final prayer, not for himself, but for those who would read his words in generations far beyond his own. Let them see what I have seen. Let them believe in what is possible. Let them walk with you, Lord, until the day you make all things new. And with that heartfelt supplication, the vision gently faded, but the indelible promise remained etched upon his soul. In the ages that followed Enoch's ascent, kingdoms rose and fell in cyclical patterns of power and decline. Empires carved their names into stone monuments, only to be forgotten beneath the shifting sands of time. Laws were meticulously written, magnificent temples were erected, and countless scrolls were preserved and then tragically lost. But the voice of Enoch, the man who walked with God, the one who saw the end from the vantage point of the beginning, never truly vanished. His words, buried beneath centuries of silence and misunderstanding, continued to breathe in hidden corners of the world, whispered among those who sought truth and understanding. The Book of Enoch, though forbidden by many, never completely disappeared, because truth, once spoken, cannot be undone. For 15 long centuries, the Book of Enoch remained shrouded in obscurity. The early church fathers knew of it, quoted from it, and revered it as a source of profound wisdom. But then, without clear warning or explanation, it was abruptly struck from the canon of accepted scripture. Councils convened, decisions were made behind closed doors, and the Book of Enoch was labeled as heresy, myth, and fiction. Too strange, too powerful, too uncomfortable for those who sought to maintain control. It was sealed away, not because it was demonstrably false, but because it revealed too much, challenging established doctrines and power structures. Still, against all odds, it survived. In the remote highlands of Ethiopia, among devout monks who prayed by candlelight and carved sacred hymns into stone tablets, the book was carefully guarded, passed down through generations in the ancient Guizi language. Its fragile pages were worn by the passage of time, but its timeless truths were meticulously preserved in unwavering faith. While the Western world largely forgot about its existence, Ethiopia remembered. While seminaries debated theological nuances, humble shepherds sang its verses under the starlit sky. While grand libraries turned their backs in disdain, the rugged mountains kept it safe from harm. And then, in the late 19th century, it miraculously resurfaced, emerging from the shadows of obscurity. A Scottish traveler, James Bruce, returned from his explorations in Ethiopia with ancient manuscripts tucked securely under his arm and a profound sense of awe in his heart. Scholars eagerly read the time-worn pages and were stunned by what they discovered. Here was a vision of cosmic scope, older than Moses, more detailed than Daniel, and more prophetic than any other apocryphal text. It spoke of angels and giants, heavenly realms and divine calendars, and a mysterious figure known as the Son of Man long before the Gospels were written. The Book of Enoch had waited patiently for its rediscovery. Enoch's words spoke with fresh urgency to a world steeped in corruption, of the seduction of knowledge without wisdom, the rise of the Nephilim, the chains of judgment, the purifying fire to come, and, above all, the boundless mercy extended to those who walk in righteousness. His voice echoed across the ages like a clarion trumpet sounding, not just to the past, but to our present, warning us of the dangers that lie ahead. Enoch was not merely telling fanciful stories. He was delivering a vital warning to the world, and today, his warnings have never felt more relevant. For we live in a time when knowledge is abundant, but wisdom is exceedingly rare. When the line between human and divine is being challenged once again. When technology offers godlike power without godly restraint. When vanity is worshipped and truth is readily sacrificed on the altar of convenience. When sorcery wears new and deceptive clothes, and the whispers of the watchers echo through the glowing screens that dominate our lives. Enoch saw it all with piercing clarity. And he wrote, not to condemn, but to call the righteous to endure, to call the broken to return, to call the sleeping to wake from their slumber. He reminded us that the war is real, that it began in the heavenly realms, but now rages within our very hearts, that unseen spirits still stir rebellion and dissent, that the giants of the past cast long and ominous shadows into our present, that evil wears many masks, but the outcome remains the same: destruction and despair. Yet, he also showed us the end, the glorious culmination of God's plan. He saw the throne, the Lamb, the judgment, and the restoration. He saw that the story is not ultimately hopeless, that mercy still flows like a river from the throne of grace, that the righteous are not forgotten by their Creator, that heaven is not a distant and unattainable place, but near, closer than we dare to imagine. He wrote again and again that those who walk in truth will shine like the stars for all eternity, that the Son of Man will not forget his own, that even in the darkest age, light cannot be overcome. Enoch's life stands as a powerful testimony to this enduring truth. You do not need to be mighty in worldly power to change the world. You only need to walk faithfully with God. You need not call down fire from the heavens or rule over vast nations. You only need to listen, obey, and endure. The world mocked him. The fallen angels feared him, but heaven embraced him. And now his words return to us, ancient, yes, but vibrantly alive. For every generation that wonders where the battle began, where the darkness came from, why the world trembles, and whether hope remains, Enoch answers. His book, once buried and forgotten, now rises to awaken and enlighten. And now it is in your hands. What will you do with it? Will you heed the warnings it contains? Will you seek the one who walks with those who are faithful? Will you rise in the face of darkness, not with arrogance or pride, but with the radiant light of truth? Because the story is not over. You are still living in the middle of the book. The final chapter has been written, but the ink has not yet dried on your page. Enoch has spoken. The Lamb has come. The throne awaits. The Spirit still calls. Walk with God, and you too may be taken into glory.